Good morning, DJ and PK. It's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Welcome in on a Friday morning and a football Friday. We've actually got football tonight. Indiana and Oregon. A Big Ten rematch. Indiana beat them in Eugene in the regular season. And, of course, now Indiana and Oregon are playing for the right to face Miami in the title game. That Miami-Ole Miss game, that was great. And it ended with the SEC eliminated. So they won two games, one when Alabama played Oklahoma and they had to win a game, and the other when they played Tulane. They have 5 teams in. They went 2-5. You know, I don't think we're going to see 5 SEC teams in a 12-team tournament next year. Maybe if it goes 16, there's got to be a little payback, a little retribution for that wretched performance. That was not good from the SEC. All right. Also, the Utah Jazz played last night, and they got the win. They beat the Dallas Mavericks. For more, let's get to the Best of the Jazz postgame show.
So Jazz recap here on DJ and PK 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Jake Scott with you, and the Jazz win. Second night of a back-to-back, come back home and beat the Dallas Mavericks 116-114. Clutch execution down the stretch. Big shot from Keontae George, and the Jazz go away winners at home. Lauri Markkanen led the way with 33 points and 7 rebounds. Keontae 19 points, 7 assists, 0 turnovers for Keontae. Bryce Sensabaugh added 14 in the win. Let's get to the postgame sound and hear from Jazz head coach Will Hardy.
After a long trip to come back on a back-to-back and having some guys out, I thought the team really dug in, and that's like a grinded-out win. I thought our crowd was terrific tonight and gave us a big lift. But the reasons why we were able to grind out a win on a night, you know, where there may be some fatigue coming off the road, and we don't shoot it well, is our defense tonight I thought was great. We had some really long stretches where we guarded the paint well. The fourth quarter, they only had 4 paint points. And then we only had 9 turnovers, and you end up winning the possession battle. And that gives you a chance to win on nights when you're not your best in terms of shot making. And I think it's a good example for our group of things that we can try to focus on every single night so that we're not just reliant on shots going in. I thought a lot of guys contributed tonight. Obviously, Lauri had a big game. Key made a big shot late, but I think Cody continues to improve and is having some really solid minutes for us. His defense has been pretty high level here recently, and he's putting a lot of pressure on the rim. He caught 2.5 lobs in a quarter, which I thought was great. Getting out in transition, putting pressure on the rim, he's finding ways to impact the game. Walt had another solid night, and I also felt like Kyle Anderson gave us a big lift tonight. His basketball IQ, his savvy, I think really helps us in a lot of ways. Even the last play where they're trying to run the catch and shoot for Klay Thompson, he's guarding the inbounder and sags off and kind of ends up making Klay have to take a little bit of a different route so he can't get a catch and shoot. So really happy for him. He's obviously not been in the rotation full time, and he's stayed ready and continued to work. And, always happy when guys do get an opportunity and they're ready to go. But that's a great win coming off a road trip. I'm really proud of the team.
Is it maybe reading too much into Walt's past experience, or is it correct in saying, like, late game situation and those bright lights, that he has experienced those things before, and so that helps him here?
Yes, he has experienced those things, and Walt is definitely not afraid in those moments. At the same time, this is a different level, and so I think there's things that he probably takes from that experience. I also think it's probably just part of who Walt is. He doesn't shy away from big moments. He's taken a lot of big shots in his life. And so it's definitely something that it's one of the things that we really liked about Walt in the draft, was that he had a winning pedigree and is tough and has shown that in tough moments that he's got the courage to deliver. I think it's definitely part of it.
Bryce had deep three late in the game and then had the steal and kind of run out the basket. Seems like he's been making maybe more of a consistent impact recently, but just kind of what have you made of his play tonight in general?
Yeah, I think Bryce has worked incredibly hard, and we've talked a lot about the work that he's done on his body and what that has given him the ability to do on both sides of the ball. It speaks to the work that he's put in that Bryce actually hasn't been shooting it great from three lately. And I think coming into this year, that was kind of all of our impression of Bryce, was that like that is his number one thing and that's how he's going to impact the game. And so for him to make other plays, like he's had some great drives lately, some big dunks. He's putting pressure on the paint to get to his little turnaround and floater. And then obviously like that steal late, it does show growth from Bryce. So I'm really proud of the work that he has put in. He's stayed consistent with his approach. He's stayed consistent with the things that he says he's focused on, his defense, and trying to impact the game in other ways than just shooting. So I think it does speak to the work that he's put in and his growth to have those things happen for him late in the game tonight, because we're all waiting for Bryce to get hot for a couple of weeks, and we all know it's coming at some point.
It was another high-scoring night in the paint. What have you liked about the team's ability to put pressure on the rim consistently?
Yeah, we're doing it in a variety of ways. There's nights with Nurk where his rolling puts pressure on the rim. But I think our team as a whole has done a really good job of cutting, and I think the way that we've been able to utilize space to create driving lanes for perimeter players has been really good lately. Also that takes the people with the ball doing a good job of creating the advantage one-on-one and getting downhill. But it's been a team effort to do it. To do it last night and then to do it again tonight where Nurk doesn't play and you don't really have the rolling threat that Nurk provides, it does show that the team is understanding different ways that we can apply pressure on the paint.
That is Jazz head coach Will Hardy after his team's 116-114 win over the Mavericks. Let's move on to the players. Hear from Keontae George.
Tonight you bring it. Where did you find the energy to pick up this really impressive win?
I mean, yeah, we talk about competing up at our compete level, but I think today, from top to bottom, we was just professional, understanding what we're here for. At the end of the day, it's a part of our day, 48 minutes. I mean, we trained for so long. This is what we work for, so we did what we needed to do, obviously, throughout the day to make sure we was ready. And, honestly, I can speak for myself, and it just felt great to be around the home crowd and feel the energy. I'm sure everybody on the squad felt the same, so obviously the fans give us, that boost of energy when we need it.
Where do you find the defense lately? Isaiah said it was about film session, but you guys have found something. Where did it come from?
I mean, obviously, we went back and watched the mistakes, obviously, but it's more so of a want to. We have to look ourselves in the mirror, understand, what type of team we wanted to be, what's our identity on that side of the floor. For us, I mean, we just want to, you talk about being the bully. We just want to be the bully on that end. Let's be physical, set the tone of the game, and but it's just a will to want to. Everybody on the floor wanted to guard. Everybody wanted to get stops, but it's that will to win at the end of the day.
The beauty of this team of late is everybody's contributing. And in the fourth quarter, you came on, Lowry came on, but Sensabaugh and Walt came on big too. Talk about guys who now step up, like a Bryce Sensabaugh.
Not for sure. I mean, Bryce's time is, I mean, y'all seen the games where he can go for 20, 30. Like, he got. I've seen him do so many things in practice. Yeah. He got all the tools. But yeah, Walt's been coming into his own. But yeah, when you look at the good teams down the stretch, obviously, teams have their guys, but if we can continue to play team ball and the other team doesn't know who we getting the ball to, what plays you're running, like if we can just let the ball have energy, I think that's what we did tonight. Bryce hit a big time tray ball, top of the key. Larry felt like he had it going all night, and then I was able to step up, make a big turnaround, But everybody defensively, Walt making a phenomenal play at the rim, coming over fouling, like it's just things like that honestly, lead to winning. So we're trying to put ourselves in these spots as much as possible this season. So now we can stop talking about the compete stuff and we can talk about, the little schemes and stuff. So, down the stretch, we're able to execute and win the game.
Do you feel the growth with this team? Is it happening right now?
We've showed spurts, but obviously the game last night and to come in and play the way we played, it should be a positive thing for us. So obviously we get the day off and then we come back and play a good Charlotte team. But Scott said it to us in film, like we did it one night, but we can't just do it one time. We got to do it over and over and over again, but we got to take it day by day. So I think that's just what we're trying to do right now. We got 2 really good days as far as competing. So we go back to the drawing board and do it all over again.
That's Keontae George, 19 points, 7 assists for Keontae last night. Let's now hear from Isaiah Collier.
8-day, four gamer. It's amazing you guys worked through this.
Yeah, like you said, a long road trip. We were tired for sure. We just got back last night, but it's no excuse at all. Come out here and play every single day, when we're supposed to. So, that was the goal today, to get after it and, rest when we get the rest.
What's happened defensively? It seems like things have changed. You guys are communicating, believing. You tell me.
Film sessions, that's what happened. So, I think, we're starting to buy into it, honestly. I think, for all of us, we felt like it was embarrassing, as far as what we was giving up. So, it's just having pride, competing, and, just trying to get out there, honestly.
What do you see in Bryce Sensabaugh tonight? He took a couple of wicked falls last night, took another one tonight, picks himself up at the floor, and comes up with some big shots, and so did Walt.
Yeah, that charge in the fourth quarter, I think, changed the game. So, Walt hit big shots, Bryce hit big shots. That was big for us tonight. We got the win.
Finally, you guys seem to be on a stage now where Key and Marketing are working really well together. Mm-hmm. Tonight, they hit a couple late shots that really turned this game around, too.
They're who they are for a reason. So, big shots. I think that's what they're built for. And, we lean on them as leaders, as a team. And, we expect them to make them shots. And I'm sure they know they can make those shots. So, yeah.
Big win. And thanks for your time.
Thank you.
There's Isaiah Collier, 7 points, 6 assists in the win. The Jazz beat the Mavericks 116-114. Next up, the Jazz take on the Hornets tomorrow night at Delta Center. Tip-off for that one will be at 7:30. Pre-game begins at 6:30.
There's the best of the Jazz post-game show. When we come back, Dom Moore from the Mammoth broadcast team talking about an outdoor game for the Mammoth. They're going to play at Rice-Eccles Stadium. That story next. DJ PK and Dom Moore joins us, Utah Mammoth analyst for SEG Media. His appearance brought to you by Hercules First Federal Credit Union, growing stronger together. Dom, good morning.
Good morning, guys.
Well, Dom, it wasn't the biggest surprise in the world, and if it wasn't a big surprise to us, I'm thinking it wasn't a big surprise to you. But nonetheless, outdoor hockey, kind of cool. People like events in the middle of a long season. It's going to stand out and be something to look forward to, right? It should be fun, which allegedly is part of what sports is about when it's not about, money and power and all that stuff, fame.
This was huge news. Obviously the cat was out of the bag just a little bit on social media, but before the announcement. But this is a big, big moment, big day for Utah, for the Utah Mammoth. And I just feel like there's a lot of our newer fans, too, that don't really know what the Winter Classic is yet. And, I just can't wait to tell them and show them. And, it's just such a celebration of the sport, the uniqueness of playing hockey outside where, the game started, and, where its roots came from. And as a player, as a fan, it's just a once-in-a-lifetime kind of thing where you get so many people together to celebrate the sport and be a part of a unique and special event.
Yeah, I grew up first part of my life in northern New Jersey, and so obviously a lot of lakes and all that type of stuff. I even grew up in a town that's first name was Lake, and I can remember as a youngster going down there and watching guys play when the lakes would freeze over, and you'd have the trash cans there, and the heat it'd start the fire because it would start to get then, especially the back there, it gets dark so early in the winter that it was always fun just to be able to do that. And we've seen that with baseball. They have played in the Field of Dreams next door to it, and then they've gone to Williamsport and played a game. And you could tell that the players, there's a little extra juice in a long, sometimes monotonous 162 game season here. I'm just wondering, how do you think the players are going to respond to this? Because it's an opportunity to do something different and probably return them to their roots. These are younger guys, but even when they were younger, just as a child.
Well, you nailed it. I mean, listen, I was very fortunate in my career to play in 3 outdoor games. When I was a member of the New York Rangers back in 2014, we played 2 games at Yankee Stadium. So iconic venue, of course, and those are some of the greatest memories of my career. And you nailed a big part of the reason why. Just obviously being in a historic place that you have heard about and a legendary kind of place, but the uniqueness of being outdoors, playing, the ice, it was a cold night at Yankee Stadium, and the ice, is even faster than it normally is it's harder. And so there's more glide. So that made it special. And it just brought me back to those days, like you're describing, on the lake or on the pond. And just totally breaks you out of, especially if you've been fortunate to play a lot of games in the NHL. It's something that is so unique and different out of the schedule. It makes for some of the most special moments, particularly when you win, of course, which we did in both of those games at Yankee Stadium. So incredible stuff.
So how different is it for the players? Because we have heard stories about, when a game has been played in daylight, sometimes the ice is a little soft because the weather doesn't cooperate. The science has probably gotten better over the years. The ice could be a little rougher maybe. How different is it when it comes to the actual competition?
Well, the NHL has gotten this down to a science. I mean, the ice, even in some of the warmer climates, they just did one in Miami, obviously. They've been in Southern California. I mean, they've got this dialed in. I think, some of it, though, depends on the weather, of course. The games I'm describing, was low teens, I think, in the Bronx in New York, and it made for harder ice, which made the glide more. Obviously, if there's snow, that'll add some friction and slow the puck down, like the first ever Winter Classic that took place in Buffalo, and Sidney Crosby's famous penalty shot where he's stick handling the puck through fresh snow. That's what Logan Cooley, when we talked to him yesterday, he's hoping for snowfall for his Winter Classic experience. Obviously, that would add a little magic to the whole experience, but that's kind of the science behind it. But the league has gotten so good at creating great conditions for the players that I have no doubt they'll be able to do that again. I feel like Utah is perfect, especially that time of year, to host this kind of a game.
I believe you had a couple of stints with the Rangers, so you weren't there an extremely long time. But are you a brother of mine? When you played for the Rangers, did you live on the Jersey side?
No, I can't say I lived on the Jersey side. I lived in Manhattan. I lived 2 subway stops from Madison Square Garden. That was my preferred mode of transportation to get to and from the rink. Took me 11 minutes on the one train, or I could take the two or three express.
All right. Out of convenience sake, since you were younger, if you were older with a family and all, you probably would have lived in God's country on the Jersey side.
Well, you never know. I was younger, as you said. The Rangers practice facility is north of the city, in a town called Terrytown. So a lot of the players with families lived up there in Connecticut. I guess I'm well aware, though, of how many Ranger fans reside in Jersey. It drives Devils fans crazy, of course.
Yes, it does.
No, obviously, right? As far as the team on the ice, what are your expectations for this homestand? They got it started with a win. We were talking with Mike Folty. He said it reminded him of a spot in the schedule last year where they really need to turn it on. They just weren't quite capable of it. What do you think about this 7-game stretch here?
Yeah, listen, I feel like the last game of the road trip at Madison Square Garden was a big one, and the reason they were able to pull that game out is because they kept their focus and intensity despite trailing for most of the game. They were able to hang in there mentally all the way to the end to get the job done, and I feel like that had the potential to be a turning point because it was the same kind of thing last night. I mean, it was an intense game. It was a very physical game. They took the lead early, but it really took maximum focus all the way to the end to get it done. You need key contributions from all over, right? Obviously, we all know the goaltender is always a huge part of that. You need some key saves, but you need to get the timely penalty kill when you need it. You need to get the timely block shot or defensive back check play or in some cases these details like a face-off or a line change that make all the difference in these close games. And I feel like they're starting to turn the corner with understanding that and being able to sustain their focus for as long as it takes to get the job done. Tomorrow will be a big test, right? The team has not been able to win 3 in a row since that first win streak in October. So if they can do that, that'll bode really well going forward.
In listening to the folks, the players, and obviously Tony talk afterward, one of the things that struck me, Lawson Krause talking about, we were just ready from the get-go. As soon as the puck dropped, we were into it. And then Tony's talking about that too. And it makes me wonder, okay, I get it. And obviously that paid off. But what do you got to do that more consistently? Because if you show me you can do it, well, then you on your own have established the level that's what you need from the very beginning almost all the time. And if you've done it once, go do it a whole bunch of times. What's going on there to make sure that this team has the self-stated effort that they had in this game, that they continue it?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's always easier said than done with any sport, particularly, in hockey with the intensity, the physical demands that go into it. Obviously, the mental demands, the pressure that go into it, and an unrelenting schedule where you just, they until Christmas, they hardly had a day off all year, and we're on the road a lot. And so, you get good as a player as you go through your career, learning how to, get your focus up, get your intensity up to the maximum level. And it's a sport where it only works when you can ramp your intensity up to the max. Anything less than that, doesn't usually work out. But it's hard on a night in, night out basis to get all the way up to the maximum intensity. And it's easier said than done. And so I think you get better at that as you go through your career. And obviously still a lot of young players on the Mammoth that are learning that. So I think it goes with the territory that you're going to see these peaks and valleys a little bit throughout the course of a long season. But at the same time, they're right in the thick of things, right? It's past the halfway point, and it's very much going to be a battle to the end for these playoff spots.
Don Moore joining us, Utah Mammoth analyst for SEG Media. This year's a little different for the first time in, 12 years now, I guess. There's going to be a break for the Olympic Games. In the past, do players come back who play in the Olympics? Do they come back absolutely flying? I mean, the adrenaline just pushes them through the rest of the season. It's so awesome being in the Olympics. Do they come back Dragon, jet lag, changing time zones, haven't spent a lot of motion playing those games. What should people expect from teams like the Mammoth who could have multiple players representing multiple nations?
Yeah, it depends, right? I think, for some players, it's going to be taxing, right? You're flying across the globe. You're going to be playing a ton of intense games, particularly these players that are playing for top teams like United States and Canada. They're going to be probably going all the way, going the distance to the, medal round, if all goes well. And so they're going to be coming back tired. I think in the case of Clayton Keller, I think this is such a moment for him, achieving a lifelong goal and dream. I think it's going to have the opposite effect. I think he's going to come back a new man, a changed man, having represented his country on the highest stage. Maybe, who knows, coming back with a gold medal around his neck. I think that'll bring him to new heights. But I think certainly it has the potential for teams like Colorado that have a ton of players that have been there, done that, and, have been on Team Canada before. And I think they'll come back just a little bit worn out. So I think Utah's in a good spot in that respect. Karel Vejmelka is the one that stands out. He's got a big workload as a member of the Mammoth. I think it's unlikely he's going to have a big workload. I don't anticipate him being the starting goalie for his country. So, he'll be dealing with the jet lag and obviously practices and whatnot. But I think he should come back relatively fresh, which would be very important for the Mammoth down the stretch.
You talk about how we're already past the halfway point, and for somebody like me, just as a media member following the team, it just seems like, my gosh, that has just gone by so fast. And if it goes by just as fast in the second half, the season will be over. I'm wondering, as you as a former player, from the player perspective, does it go by as fast as it seems just from a spectator perspective?
Well, it certainly has flown by as a commentator, I'll tell you that. I mean, it seems like yesterday we had all this. The longest part of the season, I will say, is training camp. I mean, training camp just felt like it took forever. And then all of a sudden the season started and you blink and we're in January. I think for players, it's similar. I think there are times, though, where it feels fast and there's times where it feels long, particularly when you're on a 10-day road trip through Western Canada, flying at 2 a.m. It can certainly feel long then. But I think all the players, I think it gets easier for players when they can see a light at the end of the tunnel. And that's another thing right now that's going on for the Mammoth is okay, you got through the holidays. Now you've got a bite-sized portion, right? You get to the Olympic break. You just manage your energy through this next few weeks, and then either you're going to the Olympics or you're going to get a break. And then after the Olympic break, that's bite-sized too, because you can see that it's a sprint to the finish. So I think focus-wise, they're in a better spot now than they were, say, in mid-November, where the finish line is far behind you and is still far ahead of you, and the start line is behind you. So we'll see.
There's Dom Moore from the Utah Mammoth. When we come back, Austin Meek covers Michigan football for The Athletic. He's talking Kyle Whittingham next. Stay with us. DJ PK, and we're joined now by Austin Meek, Michigan writer for The Athletic. Austin, good morning.
Hey, guys. How are you doing?
We are doing well this morning. How is the University of Michigan football fan doing with all the changes and Kyle Whittingham showing up and hiring a staff? How's it going?
I think Michigan fans are feeling a lot better today than they were feeling a couple weeks ago, I can tell you that. This has been a traumatic month, I think, for a lot of Michigan fans, what the program has been through. Initially, it was a lot of shock and embarrassment as this scandal unfolded with Sharon Moore. Michigan fans were looking for somebody to restore some integrity, I think, to the program. Michigan fans were looking for a reason to be to be proud of their program again. I think a lot of them feel like Kyle Whittingham is the right person to restore that sense of pride in the program. So I think a lot of Michigan fans are really optimistic about where things are going with the new coach.
Yeah, I'm an old newspaper guy. I have 23 years of daily experience, and so I still write a piece here for one of the local websites. And I wrote that they got Mr. Clean because, he has avoided a lot of distractions, and he's a very simple guy in his family life and so forth, and doesn't have any really big-time things, no vices, essentially, unless he's fooling the rest of us. But with all that in mind, there's been a ton of change in this program since Christmas, essentially, and we're not that far removed. Could I argue that the most important person that he got to, in this case, stay in the program is Bryce Underwood?
Well, certainly Michigan's got to build around the quarterback, and that was the direction of things a year ago when Michigan made a big play and offered a big deal to Bryce Underwood to get him to decommit from LSU and come play for his hometown school. I think it's an interesting question in terms of what's best for Michigan next season and long term, because the reality is Bryce Underwood was a below average starting quarterback in the Big Ten this year. Now, he was an 18-year-old freshman who was thrown into the starting job probably before he was ready, and still started every game, had some really nice moments where you saw his potential, also had some tough games, including his last game in the Citrus Bowl when he threw 3 interceptions. So would Michigan be better off next year with Bryce Underwood as a second-year starter or a guy out of the transfer portal? I think that's an interesting question that people could debate forever, but getting Bryce Underwood back does guarantee that Michigan has a guy they can build around. And I think Michigan put in the time and the development and the growing pains with Bryce Underwood this year as a freshman. So to me, it only makes sense to see that through and hope that with a new offensive coordinator and maybe an offense that's a little more suited to his strengths, that Bryce Underwood can make a big leap next year.
Rich Rodriguez was in Michigan 3 years. He was an outsider coming in, and there was a whole thought that he didn't negotiate the politics well, and he's got and maybe the politics couldn't be negotiated for an outsider, and he's got a very different personality than Kyle, so maybe that would be a major piece of the puzzle. But how hard is it for an outsider to come into Michigan?
Well, it is hard. I mean, and I'm speaking as an outsider who came into Michigan 7 years ago, having never set foot in Ann Arbor before, and had to learn this place for myself. It is hard. There is certainly a mystique around being a Michigan man that you pick up on the moment you get here. And that mystique was very strong for the last decade, starting when Jim Harbaugh came back here. But I also think if there is a time that somebody from the outside could come in here and be successful, it's right now, because the whole Jim Harbaugh era clearly had run its course. Promoting Sharon Moore was a way for Michigan to try to continue what Jim Harbaugh started, to be Jim Harbaugh's program basically without Jim Harbaugh, and we saw how that ended, right? It ended in disaster. It ended with Michigan needing somebody to come in and clean up the mess. And in that situation, I think you had to go outside. And so somebody like Kyle Whittingham, even though he's not from Michigan, he spent his whole career in Utah essentially, but I think his personality, just from what I've seen of it and his philosophy, I think it fits Michigan much better than Rich Rodriguez. With Rich Rod, it was not only that he was an outsider, but his whole philosophy was just so radically different from what Michigan had done in the past that I think it was just doomed. I don't think it's that way with Kyle Whittingham. It is going to be a transition for him, and I don't think it's a sure thing that it's going to work. But I do think that there's enough common ground with Kyle Whittingham in Michigan that at least he has a chance to succeed here.
My wife's family is from the Detroit area. My mother-in-law grew up there and all that. Still has plenty of relatives there. And several years ago, we were back there, and I told her I wanted to go through the Hitsville, the Motown thing there. And we got there, and the last tour started at 4 o'clock, and we got there about 4:10. And I went in, and I told the guy, I said, man, I'm from Utah, which I'm not from Utah, but I work here now. And so, we know the stereotypes of Utah. And I told the guy, I said, outside of Detroit, there's no bigger place that worships Motown than Salt Lake City. And she kind of looked at me and think, okay, you're putting me on here. But it was, I warmed up enough to her that she took me down some hallway and got my wife and I in the tour as it was ongoing, right? Which I really wanted to do. And the point I'm making is, when I said I'm from Utah, I might as well said I was from Pluto, and the way they think about Utah. They just don't know too many people from Utah. So not only is Whittingham and most of his staff going to be outsiders and not Michigan people, they're going to be from Utah. Now, does that raise an eyebrow, or is it among the fan base thinking, hey, this man has had a lot of success at Utah, so imagine what he can do with what's available at Michigan? Which one do you think it is?
I think it's a mix of both. I think right now the fan base is more on the side of what you just said, that look at this guy's track record. He's had success basically every year of his career, at Utah. Been one of the most consistent programs in college football over the last 2 decades. At a program that doesn't have the resources that Michigan has. So you bring that guy in here with Michigan's budget and NIL infrastructure. I think a lot of fans feel like that's a recipe for success. I think fans are excited about the staff. I think there's a little bit of ambivalence about some of the coaches that were let go, because the staff under Jim Harbaugh, he really made an emphasis on bringing some Michigan guys into the staff, guys who played at Michigan, coached at Michigan in the past. A lot of that's gone now. This is very much a kind of wholesale, a wholesale changeover from a very heavy Michigan influence to a very heavy Utah influence. I think some fans are, maybe a little bit in wait and see mode to see how that's going to play out. But I think on the whole, there's a sense that Kyle Whittingham has put together a really good staff and brought the best of the coaches that he worked with at Utah now to be part of his staff here at Michigan.
Michigan's coming off a 9-3, with the bowl loss, 9-4 season. That's pretty good. Obviously, it's not up to top shelf Michigan standards, but they probably have some pretty good players on the roster. But then I looked at the schedule, they feasted on the bottom of the Big Ten. Not even the middle of the Big Ten. They struggled with Nebraska, and they lost to USC. But they feasted on the bottom of the Big Ten. The schedule looks a little tougher next year. Ohio State obviously is on the schedule, but so's Indiana, so's Oregon, and a non-conference game with Oklahoma. They lost in Norman this year. They'll have them at home coming up for Kyle here. What are the expectations are? How good is the talent on the roster? Because there's a long string of beating a bad Purdue team, beating a bad Maryland team, beating a bad Michigan State team, beating a bad Wisconsin team. How much do they really have on the roster?
At no point this year did I think Michigan looked like a playoff team, even though technically Michigan was alive for a playoff spot if they had beaten Ohio State. You're absolutely right that the 9-4 record was built on beating a lot of bad teams in the Big Ten. Wisconsin, Purdue, Michigan State, none of those teams had a Big Ten win when Michigan played them. So I think in some ways the record is a little bit empty when you look at who Michigan actually beat this year and how Michigan played against the best teams on the schedule. I do think there's talent on this roster. It wouldn't surprise me if Michigan is a playoff team next year, only because, we've talked about Bryce Underwood, but not just him. There are some talented young players on this team that it looks like Michigan is going to be in position to retain. The one thing that Sharon Moore did well, he recruited well the last couple of years. Michigan's 2025 recruiting class was very good. The 2026 class, which appears to be more or less intact, was very good. Headlined by Savion Hyder, top 10 prospect and number 1 running back in the class, who's going to stay and play for Tony Alford. Carter Meadows, a 5-star edge rusher in that 26 class as well. So there's talent on this team. A lot of it's young talent. I think what's going to determine whether Michigan is a playoff team next year will be, can they go in the portal and get some experienced guys to fill some gaps, because a lot of their best players are young players. But there is talent in this program, and I think it's set up over the next 2 to 3 years for Kyle Whittingham to have success here.
I'm wondering also, too, the lack of the Michigan connection that the majority of the coaches will have. Excuse me. How much of that is a big deal in terms of recruiting, with the idea that Michigan basically recruits nationally anyway?
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't know how much that stuff matters in this era of college football. You know, if this was 5-10 years ago, I think that would be a big talking point. But in this era, so much of it is about, do you have the infrastructure with NIL and revenue sharing and your personnel department to identify the right players? And if Michigan has that, I have high confidence that Kyle Whittingham is going to be able to coach the team. I think there's not many guys in college football you feel better about, just from a pure coaching standpoint. So it's really just about, does his personnel department and the NIL collective and all the people who have to work together to build the roster, does he have all that in place to get him the right players? And if he does, I think he'll be successful. And so much of it is just about having the money and figuring out who you want to spend it on. The connections, the Michigan ties, like that, maybe that has a little bit of influence, but in this day and age, I don't think it really matters that much. Your coach and your staff can come from anywhere. As long as you've got the right personnel people in place and the right infrastructure with NIL, you can build a really good roster.
How restricted is the football staff in bringing in recruits and bringing in transfers, given the fact that Michigan is a very good academic school? Does football get a lot of room to operate? I think we all know what I mean when I say that. Do they get a lot of room to operate, or is it maybe a little more restrictive than people on this side of the country would be aware of?
Michigan had a period of time early on with the transfer portal where they just were not very active in the portal at all. The first couple years of it, Michigan didn't take a lot of transfers. That part of that was just philosophically of how Jim Harbaugh wanted to build the team, and part of it was Michigan had to figure out which transfers to go after, which ones they could get in. I think one thing that Michigan learned the hard way early on is that the transfers you want at Michigan are going to be either grad transfers or guys who are pretty early in their careers. The transfers that are tough for Michigan are the guys who have 2-3 years into their undergrad, but they haven't graduated, because a lot of their credits aren't going to transfer to Michigan, and guys don't want to come in and lose half their credits, have to start over on their undergrad degree. So you got to be a little bit selective at Michigan in terms of the transfers you go after. Not every guy in the portal is going to be a fit for Michigan, but I do think they've gotten to the point now where they can tell, okay, this guy's going to work for us, this guy isn't. I think they've got it down to the point that they can use the portal effectively and bring in guys who are going to be able to get eligible and enroll and ultimately help the team.
Obviously, with his age, he's not a long-term solution, being 66. Is there any apprehension of hiring a coach at this age?
I think there is a bit. And I think that's one of the things that maybe people aren't thinking about it right now. Right away, right? It's the honeymoon period. Everybody's excited. I think that's the overwhelming feeling here is excitement about Kyle Whittingham. But then, as time goes on, I think that's one of the things that is going to really define how we think about this era for Kyle Whittingham. Is he going to be here long enough to really put his stamp on the program? And what is that transition going to be like? Because it's going to be a question. I mean, my understanding is it's been a question at Utah for a while, right? Yeah. About when is he going to – how much longer does he want to coach? What's the transition going to look like? Who's going to replace him? If those questions were being asked at Utah over a period of several years, then I think it's a little naive to think that Kyle Whittingham's just going to coach 5 years at Michigan and it's not going to come up. I think it's going to come up, and a lot of it's going to depend on, is he successful right away? If he comes out and makes the playoff in year one, I think everybody's going to be happy to let it ride. But if it's not everything that Michigan hopes it can be, then is there going to be a question a few years in of, okay, well, what's the transition going to look like here? I think it's a legitimate question that's going to come up sooner or later, and we'll just have to see how soon that becomes an issue here.
How does the top of the Big Ten stack up? Where does Michigan fit? And you've said it a couple times now. It sounds like 10-2 in a playoff bid, everyone's going to declare victory in 2026.
Yeah, if Kyle Whittingham gets Michigan in the college football playoff next year, I think everybody's going to feel good about how all of this played out. Even if it was traumatic to get to this point, if it ends up with Kyle Whittingham as the coach of Michigan and Michigan in the playoff, I think fans will feel like, hey, we came out of this better than we were going in. One of the challenges for Michigan is that they have fallen out of that top tier in the Big Ten now. I mean, I think they're in the second tier of Big Ten teams, but I'm not sure I'd even put Michigan at the top of that tier. Michigan played USC this year and got blown out at the Coliseum, and that was a decent USC team, but not a great USC team. Michigan got beaten pretty soundly by Illinois last year. So clearly Indiana, Ohio State, Oregon, those teams are on a different level from Michigan. And Michigan's going to play those teams next year, as you mentioned. And if that gap is still as wide as it was this year, then it's going to be tough for Kyle Whittingham to get Michigan in the playoff next year, just because the schedule is so much tougher. But I think Michigan's, they're knocking on the door. They're in that second tier of the Big Ten, but the top of the Big Ten is really strong, and it's not going to be easy for Michigan to make that step up into that top group.
What's the status of the university president and athletic director, the people who signed off on hiring him?
Well, Michigan's going to have a new university president. The president they have now is an interim president who's been there for several months. The new president is, as I understand it, going to be announced early this year. And there is an ongoing investigation of the athletic department culture and practices that came out of everything that happened with Sharon Moore. The investigation started as a third-party investigation of Sharon Moore's relationship with a female staff member. And then when it came out that he was, in fact, engaged in that relationship, the investigation then expanded to look at the whole athletic department, which has had, beyond this situation, a bunch of other scandals, including the sign stealing thing with Connor Stallions, 2 different NCAA investigations, and that's just in football. They've had issues in other programs too. So that's raised some questions about the future of Ward Manuel, the athletic director here. He's been at Michigan for a decade. He played at Michigan. Michigan's programs have generally been successful during Ward Manuel's tenure, but they've had a lot of off-the-field issues. So I don't honestly know where that's going to go. There's always stuff bubbling up at Michigan. There's always been talk for as long as I've been here of, what's Ward Manuel's future, and he always seems to come out of that still in the chair. There's some thought that maybe this time it'll be different, but I don't know. I think that's going to be a question. Maybe one reason you mentioned Kyle Whittingham's age. If Kyle Whittingham was in his 30s and wanting to coach 2 decades at Michigan, I think the instability with the athletic director and the administration would probably be a concern. Maybe not quite as much for a coach in Kyle Whittingham's position.
The most scathing summary I heard of this was that Michigan likes to pretend it's all that and that they're different and they're high and they're mighty. But look at all the scandals in Michigan the last 5 years. They are basically the SEC no matter what they say. Man, I would think that kind of thing lands pretty poorly in Ann Arbor, bodes pretty well for a complete outsider coming in, because my perception from a long way away is that Michigan people would hate hearing that, and yet there isn't a lot they can say right now when they do hear that.
Yeah, no, I don't think anybody can deny that over the last 5 years, Michigan has been one of the most dysfunctional football programs in the country in terms of the off-the-field stuff. Biff Poggi, the interim coach at Michigan, said as much before the Citrus Bowl, that he called it a malfunctioning organization. Now, somehow Michigan managed to win a national championship amid all of that, which is still kind of mind-blowing to me, but just the sheer number of off-field scandals that have happened at Michigan over the last 5 years has got to rank up there with any program in college football, maybe at the top. That is, I think, a blow to the self-image of Michigan as the leaders and the best, the program that sets the standard in college football. I mean, you hear a lot of that stuff around here. I do think that Michigan fans care about that. I think, they do care about how the program is perceived. And I think that's part of why they're excited about Kyle Whittingham, is because, as we said earlier, he does bring that reputation as a guy who, runs the program with integrity, runs a clean program, a tough program, a program that fans can identify with. They're really ready for that after all of the scandals that have happened over the last few years.
Well, has it finally happened, Austin? Has Kyle Whittingham been contacted by Tom Brady?
I don't know the answer to that, to be honest. I know Tom's got some stuff going on right now. Tom's got another coaching search he's got to worry about in Vegas. So I don't know if they've had time to talk. I mean, Tom, he stayed connected to the program. He was a big part of Bryce Underwood signing with Michigan. So I'm going to assume that if that conversation hasn't happened yet, that it will happen in the near future. But I don't know the answer to that. It's a good question.
Tom Brady's got an owner to get under control. There's one constant in a couple decades of chaos, and it's a guy with a pretty special. Yeah, right. There's one constant. It's a guy with a bowl haircut, and I think he's causing some problems. Managing up is a problem for everyone, including, it turns out, Tom Brady. So there's that. Austin, we appreciate the time. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for filling us in on Michigan football.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
If you want to hear the entire interview with Austin Meek, wherever you get your podcasts, it's available. You can listen to the entire thing. Went for about 25 minutes with him, and you can get it Spotify, YouTube, KSLSports.com, wherever you get your podcasts. When we come back, what is trending? The headlines are next.
It's time to get your morning started with the news you need to know. News update. This is what's trending with DJ and PK. Hashtag Utah Jazz.
Sensabaugh drives at AD. Flares the top to Anderson. Down low to Markkinen. Slides by AD and lays it up and in. AD still holding his hand. Jazz on a 9-0 run with 1:45 to play. Sensabaugh deep three from the top and he hit. Sensational Sensabaugh for three. Keontae retreats out, 10 on the clock. Driving, fading off his left foot and tickling the twine. Keontae George with a marvelous one-on-one move. Spins Cooper Flag around and fades back off the left foot and puts the Jazz up by 5 with 28 seconds to play.
The Utah Jazz break their losing streak. They get the win. 116-114 over Dallas. Lauri Markkanen with 33 points. You heard AD get hurt with about 3 minutes to go. That was a weird deal, PK. I don't know why they didn't call timeout. They played a possession 4-on-5, and then they gave up an easy layup or dunk at the other end. I don't know what they were doing with the game on the line, but the Jazz get the win and snap that streak. You got to win once in a while, and they got this one.
Yeah, I don't know what they were doing either because I was watching college football.
Nice. We'll get to that college football game. That thing was awesome. For the Jazz, a little stretch in the schedule here where the wins may pile up. Not only do they get the Dallas win, but now they got Charlotte coming in, which is another winnable game. A team right around them in the standings. So we'll see what they do here. It's interesting as they keep playing all these guards and finding time for them, and it seems like they're keeping 2 of the 3 on the court between Walt Clayton Jr., who got to close another game, Keontae George, who had 19 points and 7 assists, and then Isaiah Collier, who I thought played well, finding Markkanen on a backdoor cut early in the fourth quarter. That was a pretty play. Got to find room for all of them for now anyway, and so far so good, I guess.
Okay.
DJ and PK.
Hashtag NBA.
Speaking of Charlotte, who will be here tomorrow for a 7:30 game, Charlotte lost to Indiana, 114-112. The wins are few and far between for the Pacers, but Rick Carlisle gets to career win number 1,000. That guy is a lifer, PK, and that is a big round number. Heck of an accomplishment.
Way to go, Rick.
Charlotte stays stuck on 13 wins. The Pacers pick up win number 7. Anthony Davis, 3rd fastest NBA player to reach 10,000 career points.
You talking about Anthony Edwards?
Anthony Edwards, yes, not Anthony Davis. Anthony Edwards, 120, and they get the win, 131-122 over Cleveland, who the Jazz will be seeing shortly as well. Giannis Antetokounmpo says he would never force the franchise's hand with his future. Quote, there will never be a chance and there will never be a moment that I will come out and say I want to trade. That's not my nature. My plan is to be here for the rest of my career. If they don't want me, I'm not the one in charge. I'm an employee. I'm locked in. My priority is just staying healthy. Never, PK. That's a hard thing to say in the world of sports, but Giannis went ahead and said it. I would have recommended he didn't say it.
Yeah, but I think the way he says it then takes the heat off of him. He seems like a sensitive guy who's concerned what other people think, and he knows he's in a small market, and so they worship him there. So this is sort of a soft way out.
I'm not the one in charge. Yeah, I'm not the one in charge. I'm an employee.
Literal.
Yeah.
He's not. He doesn't mean it. I mean, So I wouldn't hold him to it. I think he's trying to act like he's trying to do the franchise well while saying, get me out of here.
DJ and PK.
Hashtag college basketball.
BYU and Utah tomorrow night, 8 o'clock at the Huntsman Center. 2 teams at opposite ends of the Big 12 headed in different directions. It's a rivalry game, PK, but you really feel the juice in this? Seems like a foregone conclusion.
Well, if they're at the opposite ends, that would mean that is Utah at the bottom?
Tied for last, 0-2. BYU tied for first, 2-0.
Well, you can't be headed in a different direction if you're at the bottom. You're already there.
I guess you can separate yourself out from those other 5 teams. I'm expecting it'll be 3-0 and 0-3, and I think most people are.
Yeah, but they're already there, and BYU is looking like they're already there. And this is one of those times when we've seen it over the course of the time that we've been here for 3 decades, when one team's up and the other team is down. Doesn't mean that that's the way it's going to be in perpetuity by any stretch, but that's the way it is now because we've seen it reversed. And so for the Ute fans, I get it. This isn't anything that you're excited about right now because your program is not even close to where it has been and obviously where you want it to be. But that doesn't mean that that has to be the next 10 years that way. That's the point I'm making. Sure, they're at the bottom now, but you do have a new coach, a new regime. It's a new time. Let's see what he can do. This is no surprise where they are. And this is a hard job for Alex. It's never been harder really, when you think about it, because they are in the toughest conference basketball-wise that they've ever been in. So it's going to be harder to do. And BYU, I can argue, remains to be seen because they've got a lot of work to do. But you can argue right now that certainly that they have the possibility to be the best team that they've ever had. And with the money flowing in at the best time, the best era, as opposed to just an individual team. So Alex and the Utes have their work cut out for them. But let's see where they're at in a year or two. It doesn't look good right now. We expect, as you say, the result. You're already without naming the final score. We expect the one team to win, the other team to lose. But let's see where we're at in a year or two as far as, because we've seen both teams be in opposite directions, and now it's sort of flip-flopped. So I have hope for the Utes to gradually get better and in 2 to 3 years be a lot more competitive than what they are right now.
It's interesting what you say about BYU. I don't think it's really debatable that this is the best era. And then as far as best team, it looks like it's certainly top 5. There's a lot of work to do, another 20 games to play. We might end up arguing that it's, number 3, 2, or 1.
Yeah,
could be the best team.
If they're in the
table.
Final Four, then obviously they would be. I guess the next closest would be Jimmer's team, and then you play the what-if game with Brandon Davies. I happen to think they would have gone to the Final Four given the bracket they were in at the time, but we know what happened. That's not going to happen today. I don't think. If you had a similar situation, this is my own personal opinion, that player would be banished for the entire season. Certainly wouldn't be publicly put out there like it was.
It would definitely have been handled. I'm 100% sure it would have been handled differently. And then you just get into the gray era imagining how it would have been handled. But it would have been different, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think we can just look at that with Retzlaff. I mean, there were all the talk about a 7-game suspension as opposed to, withdrawing for school from a semester or a year. Yes. Which I think what it would have been back in the day, and then that didn't look like where this was headed at all. Now, Retzlaff didn't want any part of the 7-game suspension, so he went to Tulane. But all right, the rest of college hoops. Utah State on the road at Boise State. The Aggies 13-1 on the season, like BYU, 4-0 in conference. This should be a much better test than some of the games they've just played. Tip-offs at 7. Coverage begins at 6:30 tomorrow. Utah Tech and UVU are playing an in-state game tomorrow at 2. UVU's coming off a win over SUU in another in-state game. They just beat them 89-72 last night. Weber State over your Lumberjacks, PK. They beat Northern Arizona 78-65.
Yeah, well, Troy Hudson isn't walking through that door for NAU.
Weber's at Northern Colorado tomorrow, and SUU's playing Cal Baptist, who just beat Utah Tech. DJ and BK.
#NFL.
Falcons set to interview former starting quarterback Matt Ryan for their newly created President of Football role with the franchise. Ryan has been working in the media since retiring from playing. PK, that's it. You've never really been into politics. How'd you like to be President of Football?
Yeah, POF?
Yeah,
absolutely.
The big old POF. Yeah, he's the POF. I mean, that's better than being the POFO, which I think is the title here. President of Football Operations. The President of Football sounds like a role that stretches.
Well, it sounds bigger, doesn't it?
It sounds much bigger than just running the show in Atlanta, yeah. Dolphins in the market for a coach. They let Mike McDaniel go during our show yesterday after the 7-10 season. And it just, boy, everything you read and hear right now, everybody's anticipating Harbaugh to Miami. So, see how that plays out.
Yeah, as I said, man, I'd be cautious as far as who you have at quarterback.
Yep.
I would survey the field. If you have these options that we're led to believe that he could potentially have, I would literally go and see what's the best quarterback situation. Not necessarily the most important thing, but I would take that into serious consideration.
I am 100% sure that you are thinking the way he is thinking, because he and his brother talk football, and that is exactly what Jim Harbaugh did when he went to coach the Chargers. Hey, have we got somebody that I can work with here or not? And he saw Herbert and I'm taking that one.
And then if they want to, they can talk basketball with their brother-in-law, because their sister is married to Tom Crean, who was the coach at Marquette and I believe maybe Georgia. and he's friends with Fran Fraschilla. So you can get in a pretty good discussion group with Harbaugh's brother-in-laws if the Harbaughs are interested in going into basketball.
So if you're Harbaugh, play this very slowly, see what happens next week. Just all the speculation. Would Green Bay make a change if they lose to the Bears? Would Buffalo make a change if they lose in Jacksonville? We got playoff games coming up, and both those teams have a better quarterback situation than Miami does.
Well, no one needs a head coach right now. This is literally the off season, and really, comparing it to college football, there is virtually no off season with the recruiting stuff that always goes on, right? And particularly right now, right after the season with the transfer portal, and teams are taking players left and right. So with all that down, you can relax for 2-3 weeks. They don't consider it the new season in college football until what? The end of February, maybe March. Although February, you do have the scouting combine that they do, right? The end of February.
Are you talking NFL? The NFL new
NFL,
season?
yeah.
They literally have a date for the new league year. Because of contracts. I don't know what it is. I have to look it up. But there's
March
13th.
You do have the
March
scouting
13th.
combine, which I believe is the end of February that they have back there in Indianapolis. But that's still 5 weeks away. So there's really no hurry on either side.
It feels wide open in the NFL playoffs. You think anything definitive about these games over the weekend? 6 games, and one of them is Monday. We'll be back for that one, obviously. Rams and Carolina, 2 o'clock tomorrow. Packers and Bears, 6 o'clock tomorrow. And then Bills, Jaguars, Niners, Eagles, and Chargers, Patriots on Sunday.
I like every one of these games as far as in my entertainment value. I mean, no, I don't have a favorite in terms of any personal preference. I can pick favorites who I think may win, but I don't care on any of the outcomes, but I'm interested in all of them. That's the NFL playoffs. From the first kickoff to the last, they really enthrall you because there's exceptions, obviously, but generally speaking, man, you could go either way, and who knows what's going to happen. And that's the most exciting part for me as looking towards the NFL for entertainment purposes. When I was a kid, my gosh, the NFL playoffs were the biggest thing for me because I was cooped up in New Jersey. It was cold. It was either sleeting, raining, snowing, and I would just get so excited to be able to have the NFL playoffs. I really look forward to them. I still do as an adult. I've got other options now. I'm ambulatory. I wasn't as a kid. Your world when you're 12 years old is very, very small.
It's limited, man. How far can you go on your bike? If the
Right,
weather
and I
allows you
couldn't
to
go on
even
my
get
bike
on your
at that
bike.
time of year.
Right, yeah, I know. Yeah.
That bike was inside. It was just way, way too cold. So the NFL playoffs, since as a little boy, are something that I really enjoyed.
The Rams are 10.5-point favorites over Carolina, and every other game feels pretty close to a toss-up. And the odds, literally, I mean, the Packers are favored on the road in Chicago by 1.5. The Bills, 1.5 favorites over Jacksonville. You got some teams that, they got the home field advantage, they have the better record, but they don't have any playoff experience to speak of, certainly not at key positions. So how far do you really trust them? Jacksonville did play a couple playoff games a couple of years ago. They beat the Chargers and lost to the Chiefs. So there's a little bit of playoff experience there. Caleb Williams in Chicago obviously getting his first taste of it. The Patriots have rebuilt everything since their playoff run. They're 14-3. They're at home, but they're only a 3.5-point favorite over the Chargers.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect it to be much more than that.
Eagles 5.5 over the Niners. It's the rare NFL game that's over 7, and the only one this weekend is that Ram game against Carolina.
And if the Niners won, I wouldn't be floored.
No, actually, I was surprised that Philly's a 5.5-point favorite. I wouldn't be shocked if the Niners won either. That offense looked absolutely unstoppable until the very last game, and Seattle made them look pretty ordinary. Seattle's defense was fantastic. DJ PK.
Hashtag college football.
Miami beats Ole Miss 31-27. Lead changes, 3 scores in the final 5 minutes. Back and forth they went. Plenty of drama. I think a lot of people. I think I felt what a lot of people felt. It's always good to watch the SEC lose, but that Lane Kiffin story and the fact that Ole Miss has really never done anything in football in my lifetime made me kind of root for Ole Miss. I'm like, well, why am I pulling for an SEC team here? I love to watch SEC teams lose, but that was a great finish. So many big plays in the fourth quarter of that game.
Yeah, I don't get into SEC losing. What difference does it make? They're going to be having multiple teams in next year. And
yeah, but are they going to have 3 instead of 5?
It
open up a couple spots.
I don't really care about that stuff. I mean, it's just really hard for me to generate any negative emotion about sports. If you want, it just doesn't bother me. I just enjoyed the game. It was a whale of a game. It's proving what I've been saying. It is so chaotic and such a mess. But when the ball kicks off, none of that matters. It's about what you're going to see. Are you going to be entertained? Are you going to enjoy the product you saw? I made no sense. I couldn't have cared less who won that game. But I came away. I watched the entire game. I was locked on it. It was a lot of fun. And if you want to go the underdog story, fine. Okay. If you consider Ole Miss to be an underdog versus Miami, great. I get all that. But it was just a sensational game. And the game, all the stuff around the game can impact your interest, your attention, your desire, your passion. I understand that. But the game itself, nobody can screw it up.
When you watch Trinidad Chambliss play, do you think NFL undrafted free agent at quarterback?
Well, he wants that 6th year back.
He does, right?
And so we'll see how that plays out. I mean, he wasn't even projected to be the starter this season. So let's see what he can do. Normally, when you have someone with just such little evidence to go by, it's very, very difficult to try to figure out. It's difficult even if you have a lot of evidence sometimes, but when you don't have that much and it's just one season, you know, what do they have? What does he have? If you're a team looking at drafting him or signing him if he goes undrafted, I wouldn't think he would go undrafted the way they draft quarterbacks these days. Not necessarily does that mean he's going to go high, but who cares about that? There's plenty of these quarterbacks in this league who weren't drafted high and have found their spot. I want to see more of him, but I mean, he's a charismatic kid, and he's a leader. You can see the kids around him believe in him and his ability to make big plays. I mean, he didn't lose that game, that's for sure. They scored, and then Miami scores, then he scores again, and then we know Miami scored again on that situation. So I thought he looked brilliant, but I would have to see more and certainly read more about what people who know more than I do think about him.
It's all highly speculative at this point. There are people who think he could be a 6th or 7th round draft pick because it's not a good quarterback draft for all the points you point out about his leadership, ability to win. Lane Kiffin, he probably gets points off because Lane Kiffin is viewed as a guy who can get the most out of people, and he's undersized at 6'1" with a small body of work. And you know, how much of this offense is Lane Kiffin's magic? And but there are people who think he's being drafted. I found that surprising when I looked for that. We'll see if he gets the other year.
Care. If it's a bad draft, that's not going to allow you to stick in the league. That may get you drafted, but because there's not good quarterbacks coming out. I don't see where that's going to make you stick. And I also think 6'1" is not that bad. I don't think Caleb Williams. I don't think Brock Purdy. I don't think these guys are 6'4", 6'5". I think Steve Young wasn't all that tall. I think 6'1" is plenty big enough if you're good enough.
Oregon and Indiana in the Peach Bowl tonight. The winner plays Miami in the title game. 5:30 kickoff on ESPN. I'm expecting Indiana. They looked flawless. I know all the stuff. Oh, you got to beat them a second time. Indiana, we just saw them look flawless. And Oregon, they had their struggles along the way. I mean, eventually the score was dominating over Texas Tech, but it's not like they dominated right from the get-go. And Indiana already beat them once in Eugene. So Washington quarterback Damon Williams Jr. doing a complete 360, PK. He's abruptly reversed course. He's announced he'll return to play for the Huskies. He was at risk of facing legal action from Washington and the Big Ten, and he is staying put with the Huskies.
Yeah, it's a crazy story, but, you know, we're asking a 19 or 20-year-old to make the best decisions at all times. You're probably going to be disappointed there.
Former Florida quarterback DJ Lagway announced he'll transfer to Baylor. He's a Texas native, so he'll be in the Big 12. And BYU running back L.J. Martin announced he will return to play for BYU this fall. Big 12's Offensive Player of the Year and leading rusher.
Well, I mean, that's huge for the Cougars, right? I mean, he was really good, and he didn't have a lot of backups, so they need to fortify that position a little bit more for sure. But getting him back, I mean, that goes a long way to helping you have a good season.
Yeah. Does this feel like covering Majerus' Utes? The guys that could go either way, and the guys seem to be guys you think could be going to the NFL, opting to stay for one more year. It was Chase Roberts last year. It's L.J. Martin this year. You saw it with Andre Miller staying, and Van Horn played all 4 years. So did Doliak, for that matter.
A little bit different there. Maybe those guys were getting stuff that we're unaware of. Wouldn't shock me, but we know Martin will get stuff. He will get money. Yeah. And so fortify your position there and also the team while making money. Those guys, I was once with Van Horn doing a story on him for the Sporting News, and we were going to meet at, he lived over by 7th, what am I looking at? 7th East and I-80. There's some apartments there. I picked him up. We went to a restaurant and chatted. It was during the summer, and he made sure that he paid, that he wouldn't let me, and we were just having basic, like a burger or something.
Burger and fries or whatever, yeah.
It was, but he made sure, he said, no, I can't do that. And I'm like, you're giving me your time, and I'm going to make money off you. Yeah. I thought it was, I gave him a ride. I don't know if that was against, I literally picked him up. He didn't have a car at the time, and or his car was busted, one of the two, so I had to go pick him up, which was obviously no problem. I thought, well, you're volunteering your time, and I was writing a Sporting News big story on him, and he wouldn't let me pay. Oh, this is an NCAA violation. I don't want to take the chance. Okay,
I get it. He didn't want to lose a game or two over $5 or $10,
but I wasn't going to report him.
I know. DJ and PK.
Hashtag Major League Baseball.
Detroit Tigers and ace Derek Skubal were unable to come to terms. So Skubal wants $32 million. The Tigers are offering $19 million. High stakes arbitration showdown. The reigning Cy Young Award winner.
The way arbitration works, it's either or. It's not a compromise, right?
No, this they just had the deadline for the compromises passed. So you're right. Now the arbitrator has to pick one of the two numbers.
Oh, I'd say pick 32. What the heck?
That's what Scubal's thinking is going to happen.
Guy grew up in Kingman, Arizona, which is 100 miles outside of Vegas. For any, I'm sure all the people who we got a lot of listeners who are from Arizona have driven that route. And be careful too, because that's a big speed trap right before and after Kingman. I've seen guys being pulled over many times. Obviously, I've made that trip many times myself. And he only had one offer, Seattle University. And he goes there or blows up. He's going to pitch in the World Baseball Classic, as is Skeens, the kid from Southern California who spent a year or two at Air Force and then transferred over to LSU. He's going to pitch, and they're regarded as the two best pitchers. Now, they have a bunch of rules as far as what they want you to do with innings, so it's not like they're going to go out there and throw a no-hitter because they're not going to pitch that long. But both of these guys, two best pitchers, have signed on to be in the Baseball Classic in March.
DJ and PK.
Hashtag NHL.
The 7-game homestand continues for the Utah Mammoth. Game 2, the St. Louis Blues coming to town. A division game. The Blues sitting on 42 points and the Mammoth on 45. Everybody's thinking, got to get going. Got to get 2 points tonight. Puck drops at 7, pregame at 6.
Yeah. It's fun for this team to have these games have such huge stakes in January and implications. You have literal stakes in the point standings, but implications. Oh, man, it's the first 3-game win streak since earlier in the season. Now they got it going. Blah, blah, blah. Cooley will come back in a bit. Yeah, and they'll roll into basically the Olympic break with a whole lot of momentum, man, and then they'll come back and they'll be charged. We're using each game as if it's some springboard to something much bigger, even though it's not literally that. We're anticipating that it'd be that, and that's a fun situation to be in.
Adrian Denny, 6 o'clock tonight with Hockey Night in Utah. Mike Folta on the call at 7. That is what is trending. DJ and PK. It's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Kevin Graham's talking football at 8 o'clock. David Locke is talking Jazz at 8:30. And Dustin Smith is talking quarterbacks at 9 o'clock. A lot of football ahead. The question of the day is next. Stay with us.
This is Hans Olsen and Scotty G.
Don't touch that button. Check this out.
Eric Weddle, kind enough to join us.
We need to get back to players that want to be a part of our university, that will appreciate what the university can give them. The culture, the buy-in, what Coach Morgan and those guys are going to be emphasizing day in and day out of being great men on and off the field, right? Future leaders, future husbands and fathers, like those programs are what I want my son to be a part of. It's not the guys that are money hungry. We're not going to beg people to stay at our university. We're not going to overpay guys because they got other universities that are offering more money. Then if that's the case and you don't appreciate what this school can give you, then good luck, because we're going to be fine. The University of Utah is an amazing school with amazing support, and those who want to be a part of it, let's ride.
It's Hans and Scotty, weekdays from noon to 3, presented by Mountain Land Supply on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. It is time for our hot takes or toast. Utah star defensive end John Henry Daley commits to Michigan. Not a big surprise. We knew he was in the portal. Everybody had an idea where he might end up. Now he's committed to Michigan. Ute fans, what is your mood about all of this? And PK, if we had to sum it up very quickly, the answer is not good.
Not good.
Not good.
Yeah, it's
John,
an amazing situation.
Yeah, there is some nuance to it. John says, I hope selfishly that he'd stay at Utah for our own enjoyment. But it is unsurprising he went to Michigan. That's hard to turn down, and I expect he'll continue to do great things on an even bigger stage.
Well, I wish the kid luck, yeah, for sure, and good health, because if he has the good health, then he doesn't need luck. He's that type of player. He certainly was at Utah. We'll see if he can do it. And yeah, the fact is, too, if you're trying to improve your draft stock, and we can look at it, and Utah plays football at a high level. We've said it. I'm committed to it. I will defend it to the ends of the earth. But the fact is, if you do it in Michigan, it's a bigger deal. It somehow, to the NFL, proves a little bit more than the Big 12, even though Utah can rank with many programs and putting great defensive linemen and great defensive players into the NFL. But it's bigger than John's decision. This is the whole Michigan-Utah thing here and how it's happened with them taking Kyle, obviously taking pretty much the entire offensive staff. And then you guys were talking about yesterday, the strength and conditioning guy, and it even dips down to BYU. Well, let's see. I'll take a couple of BYU guys too. I think basically he takes Jay, and then Jay takes Gennaro, rather than Kyle saying, Jay, you got to take Gennaro. My guess would be that would more of a Jay saying, hey, I want to take Gennaro, and Kyle saying, sure, fine, if you think so. I believe you. And so obviously it took two coaches away, but it gutted certainly Utah's offensive staff. And now we have one player. If it's only one player, I would consider Utah very fortunate, particularly when you start comparing to other places. And obviously the foremost example right now is Iowa State with, I think it's like 16, 17 guys going to Penn State over there with Matt Campbell doing his thing with Penn State next year. So if you only lose John, I think that would be fortunate, but I have a feeling it'll be more than that. It's a really bizarre deal here. It's like it's one of these things, you read about tragedies every day, something. And we obviously had something there a couple of nights ago there in Salt Lake on the west side. But it seems like, and I'm making a comparison of real life to football, so there really is no comparison. But when you hear these things, that always happens to somebody else. It doesn't happen to me. And then when you see, and that obviously is a million trillion times more serious. When you see like the Matt Campbell thing, it's like, oh, that happens to other schools. That doesn't really happen to us. And here in the small detail, just a small particle of life here, it's happening to Utah when you wouldn't think it'd happen to Utah because we're out here in the middle of nowhere. Nobody pays attention to us. We don't have that. And sure enough, Michigan, a big-time blue blood, is stealing a lot of your people. And that's just, it's an amazing, incredible story, even if it would have been more natural, meaning that the Michigan Wolverines administration came after Kyle to hire him, and then he tells Utah, okay, I'm leaving. Now, we know that's not the way it happened, so you add on the way it happened, and it becomes more bizarre than the traditional coach leave to take a better job situation that we see all the time.
Once it happened, you knew players were going. You knew coaches. The question is how many. This is one. I assume it'll be 2 or 3. I don't think it turns into an Iowa State-Penn State situation. Penn State's coming off a down year. Michigan's got a young team. I think this is Michigan, when they won the title 2 years ago, was loaded. There were a lot of guys. It was kind of like when Urban Meyer was at Utah. There were a lot of seniors, and they're underclassmen going to the draft. And so I think they lost their entire offense. They may have had like one starter back. I mean, it was just, that was a veteran team. So Kyle's going into a place where a lot of freshmen, sophomore, highly recruited, have started to play. So I don't think he needs a lot of guys. I don't think he'll take a lot of guys. But Utah always produces NFL guys. And college football, no matter how good your team is, you can always use a couple more NFL guys. So the top end of the roster, yeah, it's one. I don't think anybody's going to be surprised by 2 or 3. Now, I think if we start getting to 7, 8, 9, people are going to be surprised.
Off Utah's roster, I believe I saw the list yesterday that they have taken 7 transfers so far.
Michigan has taken 7?
Okay numbers. I think that's what I saw.
Oh,
yeah, you can go look it up.
All right.
But just cruising around yesterday to get this information, because this is a wild time.
Yeah.
It seems like if you're off social media for an hour,
you miss another one. Yeah.
You missed 5 players that have committed to XYZ school. And so I was searching around when I saw John made that decision. How many have they had? And that's not an outrageous number. I mean, Utah itself has had 30, 40 guys, when you include the new recruits too, as far as being brand new to the roster. And I think Smith Snowden was there at Michigan, and I saw something. Oh, he had a fantastic time. Well, of course you're going to have a fantastic time. You're at Michigan. You can go to Chico State, and they're going to wine and dine you. So they're trying to put their best foot forward. It's like when you met Honey's parents. I mean, I'm sure you actually probably shaved, maybe bought yourself a new suit and had some cummerbunds and made sure you were looking as good as you could possibly look, which, that's not easy to do. But you did that. You put your best foot forward. And then sure enough, man, you wooed Honey. And now she's yours forever and ever. I mean, look at it. It worked perfectly.
First off, I did not have cummerbund on the old bingo card for today's show, so that you broke some new ground there. And second off, at that point in my life, I was shaving like once every other month.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So you made sure
that was the one day in 60 that I needed to shave.
Yes, that proves my point even more. You were making sure you looked your very, very best. With Honey's parents, Mr. Honey. I mean, he was a rigid dude. You didn't mess around with him. High standard, man. That was his daughter.
Seriously, he was Naval Academy. You did not mess
right,
around.
I knew that. You told me that.
Naval Academy Vietnam veteran. Do not mess around with my father-in-law.
Right. I knew that because you had told me those very facts.
Yep.
So I knew so I could imagine how it would have been in that. My father-in-law was a dude from Switzerland who was an avant-garde guy, and basically, hey, whatever makes you happy, brother.
I can tell you my father-in-law never called me brother.
Although my father-in-law did serve in 2 countries' militaries.
Oh, really?
He served in, Switzerland, and then he came to the U.S. through Canada and came through Detroit, which is how we met my mother-in-law, because I've told you that they have the Detroit background, and that obviously that's up there close to Canada, and then served in the U.S. military. So how about that?
Yeah. I'm looking at a list here. It looks like there's 23 guys in the transfer portal from leaving Michigan, and 1 has withdrawn and returned to the team. That was big news. Andrew Sprague, who's a well-thought-of tackle for them.
Yeah. So I assume that there might be Smith. Certainly he went there. Would he want to go? Would he make that official? Wouldn't shock me, but he's got other options.
Yeah.
And so pursue his other options. He's a talented young man, and he's very engaging. And his personality is one that is very, very impressive. So when he goes to these places, now he doesn't necessarily have to introduce himself to the Utah coaches who are at Michigan because they already know him. But if he goes to these other places, you're going to walk away thinking, wow, that's a kid I would like to have in my program because he's an impressive young man and he's got skill. So he has the options. We'll see how that plays out in the coming days, and you go from there. But this is really just a crazy situation to have this be Utah to Michigan. What a connection. It was weird in a sense when Bronco brought his guys with him to go there, Kelly Papinga being one, and Robert and I and others, obviously. I think Jason Beck was there too, right? And so they followed him over there, and that seemed weird. But this seems even way weirder. Virginia has its place, but it's not Michigan, and few are. And you're going to the cream of the crop. And now I'm hoping he's done, but freaking Whittingham has been all over the place with his stinking interviews, man. You can't get him to shut up now. He's obviously selling the program. Virtually any national show he's done. Yep. I'm so grateful that Oprah does not have the show
there
anymore.
Yeah.
Or he'd be on the couch. Or Maury Povich, you are the coach of Michigan.
Maury Povich. And it's not just Utah, though. He just got a running back, Taylor Tatum, from Oklahoma. And he's hit up UNLV and Pitt transfers. So...
yeah, right. And I think there was several. I think I counted 7.
All right, DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. BYU keeping guys home. We will get to that next. Stay with us.
This is JJ and Alex. I got this.
It's official, the 2027 Winter Classic going to get played at Rice-Eccles Stadium. Here's what's cool about this is a fan base and this is a state that knows how to fill up a stadium even if it's cold. And it's one of those deals where I think that a lot of folks are not just excited about it. It's another tip of the cap to the folks at SEG. Frankly, they're pulling out all the stops to make sure that everybody gets visibility in this market, which is what you need.
We're growing up as a sports market, and this is a sign of that. The passion you see in the Delta Center, in their barn, every night they play at home. And then to get an event like this coming to town at Rice-Eccles Stadium. And we're not far off from the 2034 Winter Olympics. Mm-hmm. You just see all these things happening. Just insane the amount of growth we're seeing when it comes to sports. And this is just the next big thing.
Catch JJ and Alex afternoons from 3 to 7 on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Question of the morning, part 2, because PK, have one Utah question, have one BYU question. We got a lot of segments to do, and if Ute and Cougar fans don't have something to talk about, they'll start complaining about the obvious bias.
I believe in inclusion.
There you go. Bear Bachmeier and LJ Martin, both coming back next season. Will the Cougars let the good times roll again?
I would anticipate the answer being yes.
Yeah, the answer's got to be probably yes. You never know, especially in a sport with all the injuries and teams getting gutted and all that. But there's no reason to be sitting here picking against them right now.
No, if they roll out 3 consecutive double-digit win seasons, wow, that's extremely impressive. I really don't know, as a fan of BYU, those fans, what could you possibly ask more of? You want this and that. You want playoff. You want Big 12 title. I understand all that. Everybody wants that. You're no different. Every single Big 12 fan wants to be in Arlington next December in 11 months playing for the right to win the conference. I get that. Now, you're no different than anybody else. But if you roll out and go 10-2 next season in the regular season, wow, that is really, really something. And we may be having the same press conference again where Kalani is saying, yeah, well, I thought about my mistake. Or, no, this is too good to take. I got to do what's best for me and my family.
You just write like 3 press conferences, and then Kalani walks up to the table and picks one of them and walks out and executes that press conference.
Sure. I mean, they all sort of say the same thing.
I do think that what you said, the more you win in a place like BYU in the Big 12, right? There are people who've got these, not 25, but like 50, 100-year pedigrees. And when they're down, where do you think they're going to come shopping for a coach? The phone calls are going to keep coming if the 10-win seasons keep coming. It's Penn State this year, and who will it be next year? Florida State, I don't know. Notre Dame, if Fruin takes off for the NFL at some point, where are they going to come calling? Alabama, excellent point. Yeah, what if they have a 3-loss season and don't make the playoff or are out in the first game? Yeah. I could see that. And where are they going to come calling? And the thing is, in the Mountain West, in those days, PK, didn't it feel like we were off the radar? As a state, as a conference, all these programs, off the radar. And it starts changing. And, BYU could punch above their weight, right? The Cotton Bowl season, 1984. But Lavelle wasn't going anywhere. And then the game started changing. I guess Lavelle did turn down the Lions, though. So even then, though, somebody did come calling.
Well, he also,
but now
also turned down Texas at one point, too.
And it's just more obvious than ever now that the phone is going to ring. And the funny thing is, it could be a 10-win season, but the phone could be ringing long before they get to 10 because now coaches are getting fired in September. So you could be off to a 4-0 start. You'd be 5-1, and the phone could be ringing.
I'm waiting for the first athletic director in August to say, "Man, that was a miserable inter-squad scrimmage. You're gone."
It's just a matter of time.
Our training camp sucked. He's out.
I mean, we haven't put the pads and the helmets on, but it just didn't look right.
Yeah.
Michael says
the way they're rolling.
Yeah. Michael says, "How can they not? Everyone is coming back," and he capitalizes everyone.
No, Jack Kelly's not coming back, but I guess you were talking about players who have the options to come back are coming back. Yeah. Every team loses guys and loses quality guys. If you had a quality team, you're going to lose quality guys. That's just the way it works, right? But, it looks like they have an opportunity to return a fair amount of players. They add some guys. If I'm a transfer and I'm comfortable with the rules that they have, I would certainly consider BYU. They're going to have what you are looking for, right? You're going to get massive attention. You're going to play on television. You're going to play some big-time games, blah, blah, blah. And so especially if you're on this part of the country and maybe you've had some interactions with LDS people, and so it's not as foreign. Even if you're not of the faith, you have the familiarity with them. And so you feel like, okay, that'd be fine, especially for a year or two, no problem there. Yeah, I would think that would be an attractive place, and they're going to pay you, and that's going to be important, right? So if you look at what BYU football has to offer, it's certainly not going to ever be for everybody by any stretch, but it looks like it's for more and more people that we wouldn't think originally would be interested and didn't seem to be interested a few years back. Now they are. I mean, you look at the complexion of the roster, it speaks for itself. And also, too, get an opportunity to get some bounce back guys. Dillingham has done very well on that, of not being able to get guys out of the Arizona area right off the bat, but having them go to school, whomever, and then wanting to come back. And that's been something that he's been able to tout. Eventually he would like to, or sooner rather than eventually, he would like to be able to tout, I can get the guys right out of high school, but they still have stars in their eyes, and then they come back. And so that they just got a kid from Washington, a freshman receiver up there in Seattle from the Valley, who is coming back for his next 3 years. Maybe we'll see. Everyone's just basically on a 1-year basis. But for BYU, that's a good thing. And he's done that a little bit, continue to do that, explore that. The future and the present look extremely good for the Cougar football. That's for sure.
DJ PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. We are talking more football next. We will talk with Kevin Graham, college football playoffs, youth transfers, NFL playoff games. It's all next. Stay with us. DJ PK and KG. Kevin Graham is back for another weekend of football. Kevin, good morning.
Good morning, guys. Keep playing that song, man. That's posty, man. I'm dancing around my kitchen right now. Woo! Let's go.
Dancing in circles?
Yes, dancing in circles. That's pretty much the story of my life. But yeah, I'm always dancing in circles. So
I think that's the name of the song, Circles.
Yes, I know it is. I got you. Yeah, I'm there. It's one of my favorites. I like posty. Country stuff.
Yeah,
you like his country stuff, PK? I know you're a country guy.
Yeah,
Do you
I
like
love
his
it.
country stuff?
I not only love it, I have since, and it has been like a 3 to 4 year struggle, I'm converting the other guy that you're talking to.
No way. DJ, you becoming a country guy? No way. I like it.
I got to admit,
Help.
Post had one of his, and it really goes to PK's point where the line blurs between country and we're all old enough to remember country and Western. I'm nowhere near that stuff. But Post was Post Malone had a song on, and I was just absent-mindedly humming and singing along in the car. And I thought, hey, wait a minute. I think this is one of those crossover songs PK was talking about.
Yeah.
It is,
Was it the Help song? Help. Yeah. Okay. There you go. Here, where they just yell help.
I couldn't.
Yeah. Okay,
That's a pop tune all the way.
I didn't make this mess all by myself. This is, the story.
Right.
We all know each other. It's a story of all three of our lives. We've all made messes, and we had help. We did not make this mess all by ourselves.
Oh,
right.
Very true. Very true. Like the mess that's happening in Utah right now wasn't, it was made by Whittingham and others in the university. So, everybody needs some help. So it's all good. So how's that?
Pretty much. Nobody's hands are perfectly clean, and yet nobody's awash in mud either. Everybody's a little grimy, right? Kyle came out and said his part. Well, I shouldn't have talked about retirement. Fact, right? But Morgan wanted the job, right? And two people can't have the job. And Morgan wanted it. And I think Harlan wanted Morgan to have it. And there's deeper stuff than all that. But if you just go top headlines, there it is. And Kyle talked about giving it up and talked about retirement for multiple years to multiple reporters. So,
It's all happening, and you know what? And the people that are benefiting the most are you two and other media and talk show hosts.
I don't think that's true. I think there's some players and coaches. I think the list of coaches who have benefited from Kyle's decision, I think we can spend the rest of the segment. We got to be somewhere around 20 coaches that have gotten better jobs and made more money.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. And a lot of it, and it's like the real world. It's like who you know and your connections and your relationships because you just never know. And, you're right. I mean, Jay Hill was sitting there as defensive coordinator at BYU, and great job, making, I'm sure, decent money now. But now he's a decent defensive coordinator of one of the premier programs in the country, or at least one of the Blue Bloods. And now suddenly he's elevated to maybe being the next Michigan coach or being a Big Ten coach or whatever. You're 100% right. I mean, everything jumps up, and it's because of who you know, and it's because of timing and some luck, and all that plays a part. So, and then I know fans still are upset and players are transferring and all that, but I hate to say it, but Whittingham has that power now, and I know they're mad because they didn't expect him to go to Michigan, but you know what? And you guys were talking about how, now Utah suddenly is on the spotlight, and players that were meant to always go to Utah or BYU are suddenly now going to all these other programs. Well, no offense, guys, but the SEC is going through this right now as well. I mean, the SEC for years could pay players where everyone else didn't pay players. And look what's happening to them now. Now suddenly everybody's on an even playing field. And my point is now Utah, this is good for Utah players, good for Utah schools. May not be so good for Utah and BYU fans, but you know what? If you're a great player, you are going to get paid to go play at a bigger school. And that's just the fact. And Utah and BYU now has to figure out how they're going to counter and keep their their homegrown talent in the state. And they could do it, obviously, but some of the elite, and we've seen some of the elite players of Utah, by the way, already take off as well. So, I mean, it happens. So, this is just the new reality. It sucks, that you used to be able to hoard your in-state guys. You guys were talking about how, everything is changing and everybody's expanding and you're losing players and you're losing coaches and all that. Well, welcome to the real world, because the SEC is finding that out now, and we're all happy about that, being not fans of the SEC. But they're now everybody else is on a level playing field, and they can't keep everybody like they used to. So we just got to get used to this. This is the way it's going to be until any kind of legislation, if ever, will be put in place to put some control under this stuff.
We saw 21 years ago, Kyle Whittingham, he was clearly the man once Urban took off. The program was in a good spot, and Whittingham had been there for over 10 years, I think right there at the mark, and had proven extremely well as a defensive coordinator, was good at what he was doing and deserved it. It was logical. So the parallels are striking in terms of what they're doing with Scally, right? You hire someone who's been there, very good. The program's in a good spot.
But we know when Urban took off and Kyle took over, it was a little rocky, a little shaky. I can't remember where you were at that time because you're all over the country. You may have actually have been here during that time firsthand and seeing it up close. But we know that he was something like 16-13, and they were coming off a miserable loss to UNLV of all things. And we're like, oh my gosh, is this guy going to be able to make it? And then he blows up the next several years and they win 90% of their games or whatever. And he solves that issue. So even though Scally's you can argue Scally even has more credentials right now than Kyle had, but certainly they're in the ballpark. With that being said, what level of anticipation do you have with Morgan being able to hit the ground running? None of us want to see him go through that 16-13 mark that Kyle did, but it is brand new, so we don't really know.
Yeah, you got to get your footing, right? At least back in the day, you were expected to get your footing. And to Kyle's defense, I mean, and I remember I came in right after Urban, so that was my second stint in Utah, and Whittingham was taking over basically. You had to get your footing, and obviously they lost a lot of talent off the team, Alex Smith being one, when he took over. So that's kind of why you went there. But these days, to your point, PK, you don't have the time. I don't think Morgan has the leeway to go 2 years like that. And part of it is, and it's unfortunate because he's a first-time head coach, but the game has changed. Money is involved. Lots of money is involved. And you're paying players. And you're playing in a bigger conference, and you're expected to compete for a conference championship every year at Utah now, and that's the footsteps that Morgan has to follow up on now, with Whittingham. I mean, hell, what was it, a year ago with all the injuries and everything, and Utah was struggling. I myself was saying I think it's time for Whittingham to step down, and that was just one season, and look what he did a year later, and how he turned things around. Well, I don't think Morgan's going to get more than 3 years, maybe 2 or 3. I mean, if he has 2 years of average football, that's not gonna take, I don't think, anymore. It's just the way things have changed. And I'm not saying he's not going to be fine. I think he will. I watched a lot of that press conference, went back and I didn't see it live, but I watched a lot of the clips and things he said, and he really hasn't changed much since. My thing of Morgan is different because I worked with him. I don't know if a lot of people remember, but back in the 2000s, once he graduated Utah, and I don't know if you guys had already defected to 1320K fan at that point or not.
There.
But no, we were there. Remember Morgan? Morgan was doing the red and blue show or blue and red show, or whatever we called it, with Jan, I think, right? Jan Jorgensen. So it
was a lemma.
And Morgan. Or Lemma, yeah, that's right. A Lemma at first, and then I think Jan came in later, and then it kind of transformed a lot of different hosts at that time. But so I got to meet Morgan straight out of college, and he was a bright kid. Although, I guess you can't call him a kid when you're 23 or whatever. But he was smart, very energetic. Reminds me a lot of who he is now. It seems like he hasn't really changed much, except obviously he's gotten older and wiser. But for me, it's hard because my memory of Morgan is Utah BYU in Provo. It was the Ratliff game. Everybody was predicting BYU to win that game because Ratliff was coming in as quarterback for Utah. And I think Utah had some other injuries. And then, of course, Utah wins the game, and I'm down on the field, going down to go to the locker rooms or whatnot. And him coming and running in front of me in his Utah Letterman jacket. And mind you, he was a quote-unquote media member as a talk show at the time. Looks at me and yells, "How about them apples, Graham? How about them apples?" and then just takes off running to go celebrate with his team. So I hate to say this, it's just hard. It's not that I don't take Morgan seriously, because I do. I mean, look what he's done, but it's hard for me to get that image out of my mind. But what was your question again? He's got 2 or 3 years. But yeah, how about them apples? I'll never forget that. It made me laugh. I just sat there.
We gave him crap for being on the sidelines in his Letterman's jacket at that game. I remember that game vividly. And they asked me to come down. He was trying to act like, it wasn't me. They asked me to do it, so I felt I had to. And then he did do that for the year, and then he transitioned into coaching.
He did,
and here we go, man.
And here we go. And now he's on. I hope he does well. He's a great dude, and he's smart, and he's energetic, and he's authentic. Everything he was talking about, and the quotes he had, and how he was responding, and his emotions. I think that's all great, and that's all great, honestly, of why he'll be a great recruiter and is a great recruiter, because people will connect with him. But he's not going to have a lot of timeline. I mean, I think this day and age, and you guys can disagree with me, but the pressure's on, right away. I mean, as you pointed out, DJ, I think in the last segment about coaches are now getting fired in September.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's and that's part of the pressure cooker. Now you're in.
Yeah, 2 words. Curt Cignetti. He goes to a nowhere program like Indiana that's got nothing and done nothing, and he uses the transfer portal, and apparently he had more money, and so there's that. And now they're back-to-back playoffs. Do you think they win this semifinal and win it all?
I do. I mean, nothing is on the again. You can only look on the field. I mean, they're perfect this year. Yeah. I mean, not perfect in how they play, but they've won every game, and they're playing in arguably the top conference. With the SEC being the way it is now, I think you really can't argue that the Big Ten, at least at the top, is stronger. I mean, I think everything we've seen on the field, they do win. They did play earlier in the season, where Indiana won back in October, 30-20. Dante Moore threw a couple interceptions in that game. I did watch a lot of that game. He was a little – they put pressure on Dante, and he was he was a little shaky in that game. So, things can change, obviously. Oregon's without one of their top running backs. I think that's going to, be a factor. And I find I'm just really intrigued. I feel bad for both Mendoza and Moore, because if Moore proclaims to go to the NFL draft, one of them is going to play for the Raiders and the other one's going to play for the Jets. So, I mean, ultimately, I feel bad for both of them, even though they're going to get paid a lot when they go to the NFL, but they're going to go to really 2 garbage franchises. If I'm Moore and he's going to be the second pick, probably to the Jets, I don't go to my Jets. Like, don't just have Phil Knight pay you a lot of money to play one more year. But I think it's an intriguing matchup. But I do believe, there's nothing on the field that has shown me that anybody can beat Indiana right now. And it's just amazing to say that. Anybody that doubts Indiana right now, it's because of the eye on the side of the helmet, because they're just that good. And as a Big Ten follower, a lot of my life living in Michigan and my high school and college years, I mean, it's just weird to see, to be honest, but they're just that good, in my opinion.
You speak of the pressure that Morgan is going to be in, and also I don't think it's just him. I think Mark Harlan might have a bigger stake than Morgan Scalley, because Morgan Scalley is a favorite son. Point. And so he'll have some opportunity. But Harlan is going to be on the clock, essentially, if this thing doesn't work. And particularly if we're sitting there in November and the Michigan is 9-0. So there is a lot of pressure on these guys, man. High risk, high reward has never been more illustrated than what Utah will be under when they take the football field next season.
No, I think that's a great point. And we're seeing that across the country too, of how ADs, are just as much on the hot seat for the coaches they hire, again, because of the money and everything involved. So, yeah, and basically what I get the sense of, and of course you can't always judge by, social media and X, and, when I throw my crazy opinions out there and people respond, but I just don't get a high confidence. I guess I don't get a feel of Utah fans being highly confident in him. And so I think you're 100% right. But it could flip, if Morgan brings out and they go and lose maybe 1 game or no games or 2 games and playing for a Big 12 championship, then maybe then Harlan's off the hot seat. But I do agree with you, PK. Like, I think, this is his guy. And the people that aren't mad at Whittingham, and I think the people that are a little more, and the fans are a little more measured, are probably more ticked at Harlan, probably, in the way the whole Whittingham thing went down, than they are, than Whittingham actually leaving.
And I think you can point to 20 years ago, I think Val Hale had to take a hit and lose his job because of Croton, and they were tied at the hip there.
Oh, yeah, that's a great point. That's happened before, you're right.
In addition to the college football playoffs, we got NFL playoff games. Do you believe that there are coaches coaching for the job in the playoffs? Green Bay and Buffalo have been mentioned. Maybe you see it differently. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, that's a great question. I know there's a lot of heat, on LaFleur on the Green Bay side. They're playing at the Bears. I mean, both those teams played really competitive football against each other during the regular season, where Green Bay won by a touchdown and then Bears won in overtime. I think you just got to see how the game plays out. I mean, how many guys are out there too? I mean, you already have 8 coaching vacancies, so 25% of the league right now is looking for a new head coach. So some of these franchises.
Harbaugh's out there. He's won a Super Bowl. That's what Buffalo and Green Bay want. PK brought up earlier in the show, hey, when he picks a job, make sure you get yourself a good quarterback situation. Well, his brother did it. He went to the Chargers. He didn't go to a team with going through 6 guys in 6 years and 4 guys on the roster, and none of them have thrown for 5,000 yards or 10 touchdowns. He went and found an established NFL starter and, got a playoff team.
No, and I think that's a great point. And per the reports, that you read, they're saying there's a couple teams with NFL coaches right now that have reached out and want to talk to Harbaugh. Coaches that haven't been fired yet. So that's a possibility. Harbaugh is the great wild card on that, but I don't know. I mean, Green Bay has had a lot of success. Again, sometimes you have to look at this and go, okay, how much is it really on the head coach and how much is it on the quarterback, and injury situations? I mean, Lamar Jackson was not healthy this year. And if Lamar Jackson is completely healthy, I'm guessing the Ravens are in the playoffs, and Harbaugh isn't the one now that's upending the entire coaching search across all over the place. So I think owners do have to take some of that into account too. And you got to think of the competition involved. And when you have that many teams and that many owners with billions of dollars they were ready to throw around, there's no guarantee, that the Packers are going to get Harbaugh. There's no guarantee, what is it? I mean, Philly. I mean, he's on the hot seat too. It seems like every week. So, McDermott on the Buffalo side. So there's no guarantees. So I think we just got to see how the play is out and how the games play out. And if the Packers go in there and get blown out, sure, I could see that as a possibility. If the Packers win, no, I think LaFleur stays for another year. Same thing on the Buffalo side.
Well, I think that everybody has pressure in the NFL. Pro sports has never been more pressure. It just keeps intensifying. It seems like every year. And as I look at it, with the Chiefs being down and out, literally, that I look at Buffalo thinking, oh my gosh, if they don't at least get to the Super Bowl this year, what's going on? Are they ever going to do it? This is worse than the Jim Kelly guys. At least they got there. We know they lost the 4, but they got there. And the Bills with Josh Allen is at the top of his game right now. He's never going to be better than he is right now. Everything is set up. So from that perspective, man, in my mind, all eyes are on Buffalo to get out of the AFC.
Josh Allen's 0-4 in road playoff games. So I saw that stat this morning, listening to you guys and prepping, and I'm like, wow. I mean, so you're right. There's a lot of pressure, but Josh Allen hasn't figured out how to win on the road. And that defense, he has not on the playoffs. He's 0-4.
I know, but Mrs. Man, I'm making PK's argument for him, though, because he's always like, it's not all on the quarterback. They were in Kansas City with the Chiefs at the peak of their powers. The stadium going nuts. They scored with 13 seconds left to take the lead. Not his fault. He left 13 seconds and the defense blew it.
Winners and record, losers. Kevin? Winners and losers. 0-4 in road playoff games. All right. So that's the stat, DJ. All right. And you know what? You also have to take into account that they are also playing another really good NFL team in the playoffs, which is Jacksonville, that nobody probably watches or pays attention to. This is a Jaguar team that's won 8 in a row. And get this. Allen has accounted for 39 touchdowns this year total, rushing and passing. Trevor Lawrence accounted for 38 this year. Again, probably a lot of people wouldn't know that. I only know that because in one of these stupid fantasy leagues that had 16 teams in it that I was playing in, I had Trevor Lawrence as my quarterback, so I know how good he was this year. Yeah. So, yeah, we can sit there and we can say, do or die, but you do have to give the Jaguars, and playing at home, they're pretty good. And even though they're
he's got
underdogs,
better hair.
And he's got that flowing hair going on and stuff. Yeah, 100%, man. Yeah. So
Houston's won 9 straight. Jacksonville's won 8 straight. How about a Texans Jaguars AFC title game? And America shrugs.
Oh my God.
They can work up no emotion for either one of these teams. I love them. I hate them. They're both regionalized into oblivion. You gotta be watching Red Zone or have the NFL package so you can watch the whole league and
Yep. I know wouldn't that be weird if that could happen? But again, the beauty of the NFL, that's the beauty of it's kind of where college football is going. Even though college football doesn't really have a salary cap anymore, or they're supposed to. The NFL is a salary cap. Everybody, is within everybody. I mean, we saw it this year. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous what happened this year in the NFL. And I know, again, by my own personal thing of A, my little $5 bets I would make and how often I lost, and B, in this pick'em poll thing I'm in with like 300 people, the people that were winning each week, these pick'em polls, they were like, how do I say this without offending anybody more in these days? But it's kind of like the woman at the front desk who always won March Madness poll, because they just pick on mascots and stuff. Those are the people that won every week in the NFL polls this year because you didn't know who was going to win. There were some weird upsets and everything like that happening every week. So I'm excited for the week. I always love Wild Card Weekend. I mean, hell, we got 6 elimination games happening in 3 days, which is tremendous. And then we got a playoff game tonight. But it's going to be interesting. I think we're going to have some weird things that are going to happen. And to your point, I wouldn't rule out a Jacksonville-Houston championship game when it's all said and done.
So we're disrespecting Seattle. We're not really believing in them and the phenomenal regular season that we've had, and Sam Darnold doing it at 2 different places back to back.
I'm not. I mean, on paper and on the field, they were the best team. I keep wondering when you're going to get that, Sam Darnold of old that pops in there. But with that said, he had a tremendous year, and they're playing well, and yeah, I mean, they're definitely. I mean, they're the favorite, and I think the betting odds are they're the favorite at this point in time. But I mean, how many times have you seen weird things happen? And so I don't have 100% belief of who's going to be in the Super Bowl this year. I can't just say like, okay, this team is going. Agreed. I mean, last year did we think that Philadelphia was going to win? I mean, they were on paper like again really good, but they got really hot in the playoffs too. And Jordan, and Hurts, really caught fire if you remember last year in the playoffs, and that's why they ended up going to the Super Bowl and winning. Who's going to be that team this year? Who's going to catch fire? Who's going to get heat? I mean, we're seeing it in the college football playoff. Look at Miami. They caught fire at the right time. Look at these tournaments. Certain teams catch fire at the right time. I think that's just kind of where we are right now with the NFL as well.
Seattle and Houston are the only 2 teams that didn't give up 300 points this year. They have the 2 best defenses in the league. Now, the margins are small, so any given week, and who knows, and special team scores and pick sixes and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But you got to take them seriously. They may not pull it off, but you have to take them seriously if they got the best defenses in the conference.
Well, what's his record? What's Darnold's record on the road?
Yeah.
Hold on. Give me a second. Let me type that in. AI. Oh man, it'll be interesting to see, man. You mark my words. If Josh Allen, if they Bills lose and Josh Allen's 0-5, that's what I'm leading our call with next Friday. 0-5, DJ. Okay. That's what I'm going to say. All right, I'll let you try to explain it.
He can wear some of that, but man, when you're playing the Chiefs in KC and you score with 13
How many
seconds to take the lead, 13. I have a hard time. The game's over. I run over to the sideline. You bum. I'm not buying it.
Something's off with Buffalo this year, though. I mean, in all seriousness,
I agree.
Defense isn't strong.
And I think Jacksonville can win that game. Yeah, everybody's like, this is Buffalo's year. It's like, based on what? Not have you watched them? It's up and down.
The Chiefs aren't in. That's what.
That's right. Chiefs were 6-11 this year. Is that what I remember or something like that?
The Bills ran hot and cold. He ran hot and cold. He was like quarterback of my fantasy football team. I was following him every week, and the Bills every week. And
there you go.
They ran hot and cold. Weird stuff happened.
Yep, I agree.
All right, thank you, Kevin. You're the man.
Gentlemen, always great to talk to both of you. And to a point that PK said earlier when you guys started the show, I want to be president of football. Like, I want to do that. I mean, as I enter my 10th midlife crisis in my life, I want to be president of football. That's what I want to do. So I'm going to work on that. All right. You guys have a great weekend.
All right, thanks. Go ask Matt Ryan how he got that title. All right, when we come back, David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz next. Dustin Smith, QB Elite, coming up at the top of the hour. Stay with us.
This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson.
Do you think the Jazz will keep Will Hardy around when they're ready to start winning? Well, they keep giving him contract extensions, so my assumption would be yes. He coaches great offensive teams. Jazz are a great offensive team right now. But I don't know if he's a good defensive coach. I don't know. We haven't ever seen him coach a good defensive team. Is that a Will Hardy problem, or is that a personnel problem, or is that a scheme problem, or is that, if you know the team is not trying to win, defense is the last thing you're going to try and do, because defense stinks.
Bingo.
Playing defense is not fun at all.
Was Phil Jackson a great defensive coach? I have no idea, honestly.
Right. Who
but
knows?
you know why those were good defensive teams? Because Michael Jordan guarded.
And so did Scottie Pippen.
Period. End of story.
If your best players guard,
you have to guard.
Yeah.
Is Dagnall a good defensive coach? I have no idea, honestly. But Shea's going to guard, so that means you're going to guard.
Yeah.
And Jalen Williams is going to guard, so that means you're going to guard.
Catch Jake and Ben weekdays from 10 to noon on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Coming up, Dustin Smith, founder of QB Elite, Spanish Fork High School football coach, is going to join us at 9 o'clock, and we will talk transfer portal and locals moving and how much Michigan's going to recruit here and what high school coaches have heard, because they hear all kinds of stuff. They are tightly wired into all of this. If you're not going to be around for it, it'll be a good conversation. Dustin is always enlightening when he's on. You'll be able to get it wherever you get your podcasts. And same with Kevin Graham, we just had on in the last segment, talking college football and pro football and coaching changes and all things football with Kevin. So get them wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, KSLSports.com, YouTube, wherever you go, they're there. Y'all can make sure they are out to the entire world. All right, DJ and PK, it is time to bring on the radio voice of the Utah Jazz, David Locke, who probably has 3 more turns left on his current run before his cell service improves. Trying to squeeze in some skiing, PK. You know how he is.
Yeah, I hear you.
I know. Plus, Yock has something funny to say to him, and Yock's cracking himself up in there.
But I hear you, but I don't hear him.
I know.
Hello?
Here is David Locke. David, good morning.
Good morning, Patrick Ganahan, David James, 2 of the greatest of all time. It's a Friday. I've been on the road all week. I'm tired. I'm not sleeping because I have to ski, and it's an obligation. And I get to be motivated and inspired by 2 of the greatest of all time right now.
I was motivated by you. I was inspired by you. I made a David Locke decision last night. I found myself getting hooked on a college football game, and I felt the duty to watch the Utah Jazz so I could come in here and talk to the people the next day. And I was following on my phone. You had the box score, and you can get the running play-by-play and all that. But I was really hooked on a very entertaining college football game, and I thought, I'm going to do what David Locke does. I DVR all the games, just in case, right? Anything comes up, I always go back, watch whatever, if I miss something or whatever. And I thought, David always watches, he says he watches the last 8 minutes. I'm going to watch the whole fourth quarter. So as soon as the football game over, I couldn't stay up late enough to watch the whole game. I'd be a mess in here. But I watched that fourth quarter, and I thought there were several telltale things in there. And I thought the post-game bite that we played earlier from Keontae George about how they've improved defensively, the want to, I thought it was on full display in the fourth quarter as multiple guys played. I thought I could see in multiple players there's a little extra edge. Portland was atrocious, but the response to Portland has been really good.
Yeah, I mean, so Portland was a mess. I thought Memphis was a mess also earlier this year. I don't remember if the game was close, but like Santi Aldama was like zip code open, would be not the phrase we used on the broadcast, but there was nobody else in the zip code on multiple plays on the same play where just the rotations just didn't move or exist the way you would think. And that has not been as obvious in the last 2 games. So they play badly in Portland. We fly the next day to Oklahoma City, so there's no practice. And without like revealing too much of the inner workings, usually for shoot around, they either do one of 2 things with film. They'll either run around the court a little bit, do some shooting, then they'll sit down and do a short film session, and then they'll walk through the opponent. So that's one way that film works. The other is that we'll sometimes be told, like, film starts at 9:30, bus leaves once film is done. And usually that means we're in the gym by 10, like it's a 10-minute film session. There's even been film starts at 9:40, whatever it could be. On that day, we got a note that film starts at 9:15. Buses leave afterwards. We're like, oh, like this is a film session. And that shoot around that day was short. Like the session was Will Hardy sitting down with the guys, going through, and I guess they watched pretty much the entire first quarter of the Portland game. And I think they've made some tactical adjustments, but I asked Will about it last night pregame, and he's like, yeah, just want to an effort. They were allowing 26 wide-open threes a game, 6 feet or more for the opponent. It was the most of any team in the NBA. Against Oklahoma City, they allowed 20. I'll look right now. I have not looked and seen yet what it was last night. NBA does not always have that up in time. But I'll check and see if I can find it. But, yes, the defense has been much better. And, yes, I watch the final 9 minutes usually of every NBA game I can that's close. I try to at least. What other things did you notice, David James?
I thought that there were several individual effort plays. Collier, who's really good at putting his head down and getting to the rim, he wasn't in for much that I watched. He got subbed out pretty early in the fourth quarter. But Ron Boone always says the last thing a player learns to do is pass off the dribble. And he's good at getting to the rim, passing off the dribble and throwing out the three-point line. But he got to the free throw line and he found, I think it was Markkanen going backdoor on the baseline. Really good pass. Zipped it in there. Maybe it was Filipowski. I can't remember. It was one of the bigs. And really good sharp from him. And a lot of times I think he's thinking shot when he puts his head down and goes to the rim. And he was thinking pass early in the possession. And when they break down defensively, it's often they're playing one-on-one offensively and then no one's defending. And when you're looking at pass and thinking like a team, I'm thinking you're going to defend better. I think the fact that they gave up 114 points in Portland in 3 quarters was stunning. And I look at the final score of the last 2 games and think, 114 for the whole game against Dallas. And that's with a 3 at the end that didn't really even mean anything. It was a 5-point game, hit a 3 at the buzzer, so what? So love that from Collier. Saw he got subbed out. Thought Clayton's getting rewarded. I thought he made a bunch of good decisions. He's playing big minutes at the end of games. Feels pretty routine. It doesn't even feel surprising to see him at the end of a game anymore.
Yeah, they had a above-average defensive games back-to-back nights for the first time since nights 1 and 2 of the NBA season.
And why was AD running around after he clearly jacked up a finger or his hand? Why didn't they call timeout and stop it? They had a 4-on-5 offensive possession, and then the Jazz, I'm like, you have got to attack him because he's still running down court paying more attention to the hand than the game. And now they can't call timeout. They don't have the ball, and it's in play. And it's like, you've got to attack him. And sure enough, you never know who's going to throw the ball where and who's going to take a shot because they're not aware. But they came down court. Markkanen went right to the rim. They found him. He scored before AD could get there. Perfect. Be aware. Be aware. Take the easy gimme. The game was still in doubt at that point. Thought that was ridiculous by the Mavs that they didn't get him out.
I thought it was telling that they didn't react to an AD injury.
Yes, I can see why you would think that.
I thought his first half was one of the most disgusting first halves of basketball I've seen by a star player. Like, his utter lack of interest, lack of team play, lack of effort. I mean, there was a play where the Jazz ran, so AD would start every possession on Markkanen, knowing we're setting a pick for Markkanen so that AD could switch off. Like, literally, I think that's why. So then he didn't have to defend. So Filipowski sets a pick for Markkanen, and it switches. And now AD is guarding Filipowski, and Markkanen's starting on a curl, and Markkanen kind of tries to pop behind. He's not available. Keontae's at the top. At that point, Filipowski's 2 of his last 18 from 3. And AD stands 16 feet out on the left wing, and Keontae George prances right down the middle of the lane, and AD does not make a single step toward the basket like that maybe he's 7 feet tall and he should be a help rim protector. Or 3 steps earlier, just be there to protect the paint because you're guarding Kyle Filipowski and you can close out no problem just not shooting through. I mean, it was crazy. I don't know what they're going to do. And then he played really well in the third quarter. And then he got hurt. I wouldn't touch that if I was Atlanta. I'll just say that.
Me either.
Come on, PK. All right, you've outwaited the pause, PK. Go.
Who's a keeper on this team defensively?
Cody.
You didn't say that with a lot of. That wasn't David Locke. Cody. There's a guy, Cody.
He's got so many other minor issues he's got to figure out. It seems like, or not so minor issues he's got to figure out. It seems like maybe that's but I mean he's playing really well. Cody is a keeper defensively. Walker's a keeper defensively. That's it.
That's it, huh?
That explains why they're 30th in defense, huh?
I mean, there's nothing about this roster that should be anything I've heard. I understand that the murmur's up and it sounds good, right? I get it. Oh wow, Will Hardy's been 30th every year in defense. Is he a bad defensive coach? I mean, I get it. I don't think it's not a quantum leap to go throw that out there and ask that question and have that discussion. Okay, Yusuf Nurkic, go look at the defensive rating of every team that Yusuf Nurkic has ever been the center on.
Right.
Kevin Love is your backup center.
Yeah.
Last night, the Jazz played really well with Kevin Love on at center. Dallas missed a lot of shots, but I think our defensive rating this year with Kevin Love at center is a 133. Well, that's because he's a power forward and he's 37 years old.
Yeah.
So the way you're a good defensive team is you have one of two core things that make you a good defensive team. You either have a lot of interchangeable athletic wings who can defend that are beasts, so Cason Wallace, Lou Dort, Jalen Williams, Alex Caruso, or you have rim-protecting bigs, and then if you have two of them, like Isaiah Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren, you actually have the best defense ever, but Rudy Gobert, right? Minnesota's really good defensively. They have Rudy Gobert's going to win Defense Player of the Year again. It's been amazing. Hasn't slowed down at all. And they have Jaden McDaniels, and then when Rudy Gobert goes off the floor, so, I mean, that's actually all you need to know. Go look at the numbers of Rudy Gobert on and off the floor. Then you go bring in Naz Reid, who's not a good defensive player, with all the same guys, and I think 24 points less good per 100 possessions. You've got to have these pieces defensively. It's not we can do all the scheme things and this and that, and, are there minor things I think the Jazz could change scheme-wise? Sure. The Jazz are trying to play a rotation thing and string out the ball handler and do this and that. It puts them in rotation immediately, and maybe they could switch more. They did seem to do that against Oklahoma City, but then you're putting Nurkic and Filipowski and Love in space, and we're not even going to play basketball. You're just going to literally have teams back the ball up. They're going to find that guy and go at him every single time. And that's no one's getting better because of that. So you've got to play – there's some level you're playing defense in a manner that, matters for who, as you develop and what you're trying to do defensively and who you're going to be.
One of the
By
other
the way, I lied. Minnesota's 16 points better per 100 possession when Rudy Gobert's on the floor than off the floor. But, really, personnel doesn't matter defensively.
One of the other things I noticed late in the game, and I saw it in Oklahoma City too, and you watch it on TV, so you can't always tell who they're talking to or what they're saying, but it seems like Keontae George, the body language suggests to me he's starting to find his voice and he's saying things, and this team's been short on leadership. Lowry could be the guy, just such an introvert, right? But looking at the age of people and NBA experience, and maybe Keontae's finding that a little bit. Are you seeing that a little?
I think the biggest story of the year is that trading Colin Sexton, Jordan Clarkson, and John Collins opened up the oxygen in the room and these guys took the oxygen and have taken ownership of the team. I think that's the biggest story of the season. Now, does that mean that we should have done it earlier? I don't know. Does that mean that it was that they actually did it at the right time? And, this is not a criticism of Colin, Jordan, and John, but their status meant that they were there and that they were there, and so they're the oxygen. And when they left, Keontae grabbed the oxygen, and that's the biggest story of the season to me.
David, we'll leave it right there. You're the man. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you again next week. We'll hear you on the call Saturday night, Charlotte.
You know what's stunning to me?
What?
I do this show with you every week, and you're always top of your game, outstanding, fabulous, superb, elite.
He is good, isn't he?
You talk about players showing up 82 times a year. You show up with the greatest of skill and talent, 250. I mean, PK misses a lot of shows, so maybe 235. Just kidding. Times a year. You're true geniuses.
Thank you, David. Checks in the mail.
PK, I was kind of kidding. I admire you missing a show every now and then.
It's all right.
Coming
I'm not
up.
Cal Ripken. Never intended to be.
Oh, you were going to be Ron Say. You weren't going to be Cal Ripken. You were Ron Say, the Penguin. Dustin Smith, founder of QB Elite, Spanish Fork High School head coach. We'll talk at 9 o'clock. All the coaching changes, high school coaches see it in recruiting and the transfer portal, where quarterbacks headed, where are they going, how are they developing. We'll talk with Dustin coming up right in about 15 minutes right here on The Zone.
Whirls around and down.
97.5, the KSL Sports Zone is your exclusive home of the Utah Jazz. And we want to send you to the Delta Center to see the Jazz in action. Listen every Tuesday for the Jazz Ticket Tuesday Sounder at 30 past the hour, every hour, all day long. And if you're caller number 12, you'll be on your way to an upcoming game.
Buy one, you'll get one free.
It's Jazz Ticket Tuesday, every Tuesday throughout the NBA season on your radio home for the Utah Jazz. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
The Hercules First Federal Credit Union Salt Lake County High School Player of the Week honors the top boys and girls prep basketball players each week during the high school season. Our winners this week, Olivia Stevens and Kobe Goodfellow from Alta High School. Stevens led the Hawks to a 3-0 mark. She scored 11 points in a win over Van California, 9 points in a rout of Layton Christian, and 30 points in a blowout of Murray. Goodfellow and the Hawks went 2-0 as he led them with 17 points and a win over Westminster Academy from Florida, and then made 11 three-pointers and scored 33 points in a 93-89 win over California High. The Salt Lake County Players of the Week Award is proudly presented by Hercules First Federal Credit Union. At Hercules, they're celebrating the everyday victories. Hercules First Federal Credit Union, growing stronger together. PK, we got a question up on Facebook. It is a very pertinent question as we wait for the people who are in the portal to land. Sometimes they return to their school. Sometimes they go somewhere else, and a lot of people seem to be going to Michigan. Utah Star defensive end John Henry Daley committing to Michigan. What's your mood, Ute fans, as all of this unfolds? And their mood is there are people who are just ready to move on. Hey, we want whoever's going to stay. That's it. Bill says, don't care anymore. Need to focus on the team we have now, not those who abandoned it. Trust the process. Trust Scally. That sounds great. That sounds great until a lot of NFL talent goes out the door. How quickly can you replace that?
This statewide nightmare. Wake me up.
You want to go back to the way things were?
In what manner? When? Last month?
Yeah.
Last year?
Yeah. How things were 2 months ago when they were playing.
Well, that's an interesting concept. Would they do things differently knowing what they know now? Now, that can apply to so many people in so many situations. Would you do things differently? You hear the cliche, no, I want them exactly the way they are. They made me who I am. And that sounds good because you're on the other side of it and you can't change it anyway. But I wonder if things could be done differently. We already know Whittingham was saying, well, I shouldn't have talked about retirement so much. So right off the bat, he's saying I would have done different things differently. And would the U of U, would they have done things differently? It's two different things there. Do things differently. Okay, you can't. Now you can still go full steam ahead and put all your emotions, all your energy, everything that you've got into what is ahead for this football program. And that's obviously the smart thing to do because you cannot change it. But as you look back, I don't know that you can necessarily learn from this because you can argue this is a once in a lifetime situation where you have this coach who turned 66 and had been talking about retirement, all these things. It's very unusual. In a sense, maybe they might be fortunate because there was no let it run. And a lot of times we've seen with coaching legends, let it run means there's crummy days ahead until it plays out. We see it with players. They mean so much to the franchise and they have to play it out. They're not going to go anywhere else. But the team is going to stink as you go along those lines. We saw it with Kobe Bryant with the Lakers, Nowitzki here. Those are two recent examples of guys who were all-timers for their individual franchise, played it out, and it didn't really work at the end the way it had been, but you had to let them go. The Jazz went through that to an extent from the statues. They're in the finals, and then what? A few years later, they're the 8th seed getting bounced by Sacramento. It had to end that way. There was no other way it was going to end, right? Well, with Whittingham doing what he's doing and that happening, they didn't get to this point where it played out poorly, where it tends to happen that way, right? Paterno would be probably the worst example of that in Penn State, but we all know there are others. So if you look at it, that's probably a good thing that it never got to that point, right? But that doesn't mean they maybe wouldn't have done things differently. They don't. Here we are. Away we go. It's an unusual situation, but if you want to look at some of the bright sides, well, that's one thing, man. You're getting a fresh start with a younger guy, and it didn't get that nasty towards the end.
That could be the upside if the transition is smooth and if Morgan goes out and wins, I don't know.
It's not smooth.
Win 20
I wouldn't call it smooth.
Well, win 20 games over the next 2 years, that would be a smooth transition.
Well, there's still a lot of bitterness there.
Yeah.
But that would smooth it over. See, you're right. Go and hopefully they do that. I'll be the first to admit I'll be rooting for it. But if it does, that'll smooth it over. If it doesn't, then that makes the transition even more difficult. The potential is there for it to be smooth because ultimately you're going to be judged on the 12 games essentially, and hopefully you play the 13th or maybe even more. But we know for a fact you're going to be in 2026, this time next year would be 27, obviously. You're going to be judged on the season.
And I do think that the biggest
record
challenge
speaks for itself.
The way this is going right now, it looks like the biggest challenge, in my mind, the biggest challenge for Morgan in his first year is going to be what would have been the biggest challenge for Kyle if he'd stayed for a 22nd year. And that is the entire O-line's got to be rebuilt. I mean, these other losses are all an impact. Losing a star pass rusher to Michigan. You got a big-time receiver in the portal. You got a big-time defensive back in the portal. Actually, more than one big-time defensive back in the portal. And those things, but man, that is 5 positions across the front of the offense, and that makes everything go.
Sure, but I would have had Jim Harding, who's already done this.
If Kyle stayed, yeah.
They not only have to rebuild the on-field, they have to rebuild the offensive coaching staff. They have to rebuild the strength and conditioning. That's a lot of rebuild. If Kyle stays, they always have stuff. Hold on a second. I'm sorry. But if Kyle stays, that there's that familiarity with doing it. Now it's a little more unknown. And that causes, doesn't necessarily anxiety. I'm not going to go that far. I think it caused maybe apprehension, slight apprehension to see what happens there. But they were always going to have to do that either way, obviously.
When we come back, Dustin Smith, founder of QB Elite and Spanish Fork High School head coach, joins us next. Stay with us. DJ PK and Dustin Smith joins us, founder of QB Elite and Spanish Fork High School's football coach. Dustin, welcome back to the show.
Hey, guys. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. Obviously, the world of college football has gotten super entertaining here in the offseason with the coaching carousel touching down, Kyle Whittingham to Michigan, Morgan Scalley, tons of assistant coaches moving, dominoes falling at other schools. I'm curious in all that's been written and said, as someone who has some access to some of the scuttlebutt and has probably heard stuff from some pretty good sources, do you think any part of this story in your mind has been missed or hasn't been told, I don't know, prominently enough?
What I think is the most fascinating thing to me, I mentioned somebody or heard somebody on your show, might have been you, David, a couple of days ago bring it up, but it's the trickle-down effect of this and how it really has affected so many other schools. And, you know, I think that the part that I personally believe is being maybe not talked about as much is the loss. In fact, I think PK touched on it in your last segment. I caught the last part of that, and that is the loss of Coach Harding from Utah, I think is something that and all of the movement and all of the things that have happened, and so much talk on the head coaches and offensive coordinators and things, that offensive line coach it's so important. And Coach Harding, in the 2024 fall, I had the top recruit in the state. He was the Gatorade Player of the Year down at Spanish Fork High School, and he was an offensive lineman, and he had committed to Utah, and then decommitted and went to USC. So I was able to meet with Coach Harding as well as with most of the head coaches and offensive line coaches around the country. They were all after this kid. And Coach Harding is a heck of a coach and a heck of a recruiter. And, I know that Jordan Gross is I assume he's a good coach. I can't say I know that. I know he's a good football player. But that is going to be something that Utah, I think, is going to see right out of the gate is, will the offensive line do what they've done and be as effective as they've been when they've got a new scheme and a new personality, and can they keep that momentum up front? Because without offensive linemen, the quarterback play, the running game, passing game, none of it really matters if you don't have a solid offensive line. So he's the one that I think, he's a heck of a coach that I think Utah is going to really miss.
When someone makes it out of a community, that person then becomes a legend in that community, right? If it's a small town or a smaller player or whatever, and goes on and plays in the big leagues, the NFL, NBA, he becomes sort of a hero for that community they left. Like Mike Weir being a golfer from Canada. The guy's a hero in the entire country. He won the Masters. And where I'm going with this is one of your own, a high school coach, goes from high school to college head coach, Eric Kerr at Corner Canyon to obviously Weber State. Now he needs to start recruiting high school kids. Obviously, you wanted to beat him if you ever played him. There's no question about that. And there might have been some jealousy with all the winning. But is now he the standard for high school coaches? And then when he goes to recruit in the state, he's going to get a lot of love because he's, like I say, one of your own.
Yeah. And the thing about Eric is I don't think anybody in the state has anything but just happiness and excitement for him and his success. And no, I never wanted to play Corner Canyon. I didn't want to. That wouldn't have gone well. But he is a great coach. I've known him for a lot of years, going back to when he was at Jordan, and he is going to have, I think, he's going to be a great recruiter. And he just added Isaac Asiata, I know, as his offensive line coach. I coached Isaac in high school. I've known him since he was 14. Another kid who's going to relate really well with the boys in Utah. Eric's going to do a great job up at Weber State. I think coaches respect him. So when he comes into the school and wants to talk to kids, he gets it, and I think he's going to be able to pick up on a lot of these Utah kids that are getting missed nowadays because of how hard it is to be a high school kid and to be recruited to, a big Division I school. The BYU and Utah, even Utah State, those schools, they really don't pay a whole lot of attention to the high schools now. I mean, they do, but it's third or fourth in the pecking order when they're looking for a kid. There's so many other kids they can go to before a high school kid, which means there's going to be kids who may have been a BYU or Utah State caliber kid, 10 years ago, who's going to be missed, and he's going to have to go to a smaller school and show it there and then leave. The real test for Eric, for all these schools at, the Utah Tech and SUU is building a program when you know that if you find that kid who's maybe the diamond in the rough or that kid that everybody missed on and you develop him and he turns into be a good player, that he's going to be gone. So you're never going to – I don't know how you're ever going to really, develop a program when the kids you're really relying on to win are constantly going to be jumping to can they get to a bigger school and make some money. So but we'll see. He's going to do great up there, though. He's a great coach.
Can those schools help themselves by getting the kids in the portal who haven't landed? We hear about all the kids stranded there. There must be some kids there who could play at the Big Sky level because whatever these schools are going through, Montana and Montana State are going through it. People are getting recruited off the Dakota rosters, whether it's North Dakota State, South Dakota State, whoever. They're all going through it.
Yeah, and the programs who can do that, the programs who can do that, and who can find those high school kids who were the caliber of, like I said earlier, maybe a BYU or a Utah 10 years ago. If you're not a 4-star, 5-star type kid now, if you're not ready to play as a freshman, then you're really not of interest, to these guys. They need a guy that can play now, or they'll just go find a guy in a portal that's ready. So those guys that 10 years ago you might have brought in and redshirted him and let him develop a little bit, they're going to have to go and try it out at a lower school. And so if those kids can maybe improve faster, and they can hit it in the portal with some of those guys that you mentioned that maybe aren't, look at a McKay Hillstead type kid, for example. Now he just, I believe, committed back to Utah State.
Right.
But McKay is one of those kids who's bounced around, who probably, if he had ended up at Bronson Barron did that down at SUU. He went out, he was at Weber State, he went out to Western Kentucky, didn't work, came back, landed at SUU and had a really good year. And I think McKay would have a really good year if he was at a Weber State or a Utah Tech or something. But I'm super happy for him at Utah State and hope he can thrive there. But there's kids like that are out there, and they're going to be at high demand. And Eric will do a great job, I think, at identifying those, because he knows who those kids are. He's coached those kids before, and there's so much talent just in Utah. If he'll just focus on the Utah kids, which I know he will, you can build a really good program around the Utah high school athletes who aren't going to the big-time college because of the difficulty in competing with the portal.
In terms of being recruiters, what do you think BYU is losing when Jay Hill and Guilford left?
A lot. I don't know Guilford as well. I've just heard things about him. I know Jay Hill very well, and Jay Hill's he's as good as they come at recruiting, and not only football. His ability to situational football coaching is something that I talk a lot about when I'm talking with coaches and players, and that's the ability to make calls during a game. Every defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator in a classroom, on a whiteboard or watching film can sound brilliant, but what you do in the 10 seconds you have to make a decision on a 3rd and 6 and being able to anticipate the situation and what's this offensive coordinator going to do here? What does he like to do? And making the right call. And Jay has always had that ability to, it seems like he's kind of a one step ahead, or he thinks like an offensive coordinator, which makes him a good defensive coordinator. But he's so good with the boys. He's just got the personality. He's going to be perfect out there at Michigan. So I think that's going to be a tough one. I think that Papinga's he's similar. I don't know him as well as a coordinator, obviously, but he'll recruit fine. But I think that's going to be the BYU defensive identity, which is something they've done such a good job at building and establishing these last couple of years. It's a bummer that they may have that may slip a little bit. I hope it doesn't. And then in the case of Utah, they finally found what I thought was an offense that was going to fit the style of defense that they play. And some guys that I think if they'd have stayed there, what they were doing with all the motions and shifting and, the athletic quarterback play, and they were scoring points and not just relying on pounding the ball and playing defense. So losing Beck and Harding, both the defense at BYU and the offense at Utah, it's going to be a makeover that I think we're all very interested to see, and hopefully it doesn't take a step back. But I'm afraid it's going to take a lot of work to keep it at the level they finished at this year, because both teams were really clipping there at the end of the season.
What did you think of the fit of McGiven going and joining Morgan Scalley as an offensive coordinator?
I know that I talked to Bryson Barnes a little bit up at Utah State, and him having been at Utah and at Utah State, he really liked him, and said that as a quarterback, he was the kind of guy that the quarterbacks will really like. He's hasn't had the big name as some of the guys out there in the country have, that I think Utah probably could have gone after. So I think Morgan is establishing very quickly that he wants guys that he knows and trusts, and he's not afraid to just keep it here local, and guys who have been around, and maybe guys who aren't
really looking to move. He wants a guy that wants to be at Utah, which I think, Kevin or Coach McGiven is. I think offensively as a coach, what he was doing up there at Utah State, he had a similar style of quarterback in that he had a guy who could also run the ball, which, obviously Utah's QBs can do. So I think that's a good fit. I think he'll be fine at Utah. I actually think that he'll do a good job. Will they be able to get going early and be effective early in the year? Or is it going to take a whole season for guys to figure it out? Because if that's the case, then I get a little concerned specifically with Ficklin. Is he going to stick around? I was a little surprised that both of those guys stayed. I thought that, especially Ficklin, that after what he did, that he might say, hey, I don't want to just be a wildcat guy, that he might have jumped. So, that'll be the big test for Coach McGiven is, can he keep both those QBs happy and so that they're both around in a year from now.
Now that his freshman season is over, I'm speaking, of course, of Bachmeier. I wanted your evaluation in terms of, I wouldn't say maybe certainly you were impressed, but what was your level of surprise that he was able to come in as a first-year kid and do what he did?
I was really surprised that he was able to do what he did. I mean, to come in as a freshman, and I think what we maybe sometimes forget is that he wasn't there for spring ball either. So
right.
To come in and to miss spring ball and then to come in and to grasp the offense, and then it's one thing to grasp it, it's another thing to then be able to have it translate over to the field when your last real competition came with high school players, and he was playing good teams right away, and he had to be able to adjust and adapt quickly. And most freshmen, they'll have a handful of games where they get cooked because they're just not mentally ready, even physically, whatever. It's the mental and emotional side that they're just not ready to handle, and especially being a quarterback at BYU and following the quarterbacks that he followed out of BYU, there was a lot of pressure, and he came in and seemed like he just fit right in. And so I don't think that Coach Roderick he simplified the offense, I'm guessing, and I think that it was obvious in some games that Bear was I think he might have been told who to look for and where to go with the ball, and they were trying to simplify it, which I think was smart, and it worked. They did just fine offensively. I think you hear sometimes people talk about, well, sophomore slump or something like that. He's not going to be worse next September. He's only going to be a better quarterback. Physically, he's going to be better. He's going to have more control he's going to feel more comfortable, more control of the offense. They're actually going to be able to open up the offense more and add more to it. So now whether or not he plays as well or plays better, there's so many variables that go into that at the quarterback position, because you can improve and be better as a quarterback. But, as we all know, football is the ultimate team sport. And I think oftentimes quarterbacks get, well, he didn't do as well as he did last year. He took a step back, and, he didn't really take a step back. He's just as good or better. But the receivers or the offensive line, there's other things that took a step back, and then that reflects oftentimes poorly on the quarterback play. So if their run game can stay solid, they've got to fix a couple. They're going to miss a couple guys out at receiver. If they can fix those quickly, I think he'll have an even better year, because Coach Roderick's going to be able to add more to the offense, and Bear can only be more comfortable. But what he did this year, having missed spring ball, what he did performance-wise on the field, but also just as a leader, he seemed very calm out there. He didn't get it too up or too down. He handled the media well. So I think BYU fans have, a lot to be excited about with him coming back. It's the other positions that, and as we talked about, the defense, that I think is the areas that, really need to be focused on. Bear will be fine.
Dustin Smith joining us, founder of QB Elite and Spanish Fork High School football coach. As football has evolved here, when I got here, high school games used to go about 2 hours and 10 minutes. They ran the ball. There were guys getting recruited, but they weren't quarterbacks. And that has changed, and games now go 2 hours and 45 minutes, and there seem to be pretty good high school quarterbacks everywhere and a few guys who can advance on and play college football. Where does it stand right now as far as the high school quarterback scene in the state of Utah and potential college players, maybe for one of the local schools we mentioned here?
Well, I got to be careful, because the ego in me guys that have been around quarterbacks and developing quarterbacks and focusing on quarterbacks. I think the guys like me in Utah, I want to yell as loud as I can to everybody that the best quarterbacks in the country are here in Utah, and I'm so dang proud of the quarterbacks here and the development they've had and how hard they've worked, because there were so many that were missed on, I think, years ago, and there were a handful of us out there that were saying, hey, you got to come and look at these QBs. I remember Ty Detmer. This was probably, 8 years ago. We did a camp, and Jaron Hall was, I think, a sophomore, junior. Zach Wilson was right in that age. There were a couple other guys that were right there that were young, and I remember him saying that there were kids at that camp that, had they been out in Texas, he said these kids would have had looks. They would have had offers by now. And he was impressed. And he, coming from Texas, he was impressed with the talent of the kids in Utah. And I think now, because of the success of some of these quarterbacks who have gone, obviously the group that's come out of Corner Canyon the last couple of years, but there's been some other ones. I think Maddox Madsen going up and doing well at Boise State, and we've obviously what Bryson Barnes did, having been a kid from a small school that no one really knew about, and playing well in the Rose Bowl and different things. I think we've shown that there is good quarterback play here, and coaches know it. I think that around the country, Utah is a place now where you don't just come here to try to find big, defensive, offensive linemen and linebackers, but we actually have some skill players out here, and specifically quarterbacks and kids who work really hard to do it. So there are some good players coming up, and as you mentioned, from the Skyview High School, the northern part, all the way down to Desert Hills and far south, there are kids all the way up and down that are good players that I think can go and can benefit from going to a school like Weber and Utah Tech. And the question is, will they recruit those kids? Because I've said this forever. I still believe it to be true. I think there's too much that goes on. Maybe it's the sexy pick for a school to say that they got a kid from California. It sounds like you found some kid, right?
Right.
We found this. He's from Texas. Wow, he must be really good then. And where it's not, if he's a local kid, but yet our local kids continue to show that they're good enough. And so, I do think with the coaching we have in Utah, I know Morgan Scalley knows that. I know Kalani knows that. They're not going to miss on a Utah kid. Will those second-tier schools miss? I think they will, because they want to show they can recruit out of the country. I hope they won't. They'll just stay locally. Morgan, by the way, man, Morgan Scalley, I've known him for 20 years, and I know I changed topics here, but Morgan, I don't think that Utah could have found, if they had looked everywhere in the country and had a chance to interview everybody in the country, I don't know if they could have found a guy a better fit for the future University of Utah. He and Kalani, it kind of reminds me of the start of what I think will be the old good old days with Ron McBride and Lavelle Edwards, and that healthy rivalry and the friendship and how kids just loved playing for both guys. Morgan and Kalani, what a heck of a place to be in Utah college football now, with the head coaches at all of the schools. It's the football is as good as it's ever been here, college wise and high school wise. It's awesome to see.
So Dustin, now the Corner Canyon's out, you want to handicap 6A football for us? No, well, they're not out. I should say they're out now that their coach is out. I mean, who's to say, right?
Yeah. Look, 6A football when I say 6A football, there's about 4 schools. Mm-hmm. It seems like there's 4 schools in 6A, and then there's 3 or 4 in 5A, and then everybody else is scrambling. But it's Corner Canyon, Sky Ridge, Lone Peak, Davis is always hanging around there. But it's primarily those schools, I think, and Lehigh is always going to be a good school. In the 5A ranks, it bounces around a little bit, but you never know because of how many kids bounce around and transfer now. So, that's the unfortunate part, I think, about high school football in Utah, is the transfer game is out of control, and it really is hurting a lot of schools, and a lot of the smaller town schools are really paying the price for the way that kids bounce around in Utah. And it's not as crazy in other states as it is in Utah. And everybody has, I know it's a sensitive topic for people, but for a lot of schools in Utah, it's hard. And for the schools at the top, these kids who come in and they're always going to be there. They're always going to be tough. The Corner Canyon's always going to be at the top of that. They're the Mount Rushmore of players and offenses. And so it'll still be Sky Ridge, Lone Peak, Corner Canyon. I'd like to see Bingham get back in there. I like the way they used to play, that just physical run over you football. And Davis, man, that Davis High School, they've been throwing the ball around really well. So you got to keep your eye out for them. But Corner Canyon, Sky Ridge, Lehigh, Lone Peak, those are your 6A teams. Pretty much 3 of the 4 will be in the semis every year. You can just book it.
Yep. Dustin, we appreciate the time as always. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Okay, Dustin Smith, founder of QB Elite and Spanish Fork High School head football coach. When we come back, everything you missed in this show, next. Slacker Radio Headlines brought to you by Trajan Wealth. Call Trajan Wealth today, your local trusted financial fiduciary. Call them at 801-210-6800 or visit their website at TrajanWealth.com. We have talked football this morning with Kevin Graham, and Dustin just joined us here in the last segment talking high school and college football and recruiting. Dustin Smith from QB Elite. PK, all the football, really good playoff game last night. We talked about the NFL games coming up this weekend. I saw you mulling. I saw you have that pose. You were in deep thought. Were you thinking about a football game this weekend during the commercial break? Or maybe one of the quotes that was shared with us during the show? Yes, exactly, that face.
No, I was thinking about that breakfast burrito I'm going to have in 25 minutes, man. It's going to taste so sweet.
Little egg, little sausage, little jalapeno.
Actually, what I was thinking about is that, we would have a lot going on. This is a busy time of year, but this whole Utah and obviously trickling down to BYU has extended our college football coverage into the offseason in a manner that we have never seen. And in a sense, from a news story angle, I'm grateful for it because it's fun. It's exciting. It's good to have a juicy topic without having to manufacture any form of juiciness. It speaks for itself.
It does.
People, I'm sure you guys are getting it. I'm getting it all the time, wherever I may go to speak to people about this situation at Utah and then having the trickle down effect, as you phrased it, for BYU. And Dustin talked about that. Even out of state, even in Arizona, getting it. That's what they're interested in. Now they know who I am, the people I speak to, obviously, but they want to know it because Utah and BYU are such that certainly in our part of the country, they're brand names. I don't think you can argue that in terms of football. BYU and basketball is building a big-time brand name as we speak. But football, they're both already there. And maybe it doesn't resonate to other parts, but I don't spend a whole lot of time in other parts of the country. It's it's Utah, it's Arizona, and maybe some California occasionally. And those spots, everybody knows about them and they're newsmakers. And this is, to them, it's a shocking move that Kyle Whittingham would do what he did. As I step back and look at it, I'm not really shocked how it played out. And here we are. And what's the effect? And now Mr. Scally has this opportunity to really just lay into his Utah roots and put a massive imprint that could put his name right there with everybody else. Now it's to be determined. Right now it's a blank canvas, obviously. And in the coming years, he will put his imprint. Hopefully for him and for the Utes, it's for the better, and we'll see. And Jay Hill's already made a little bit of an impact, and maybe more than a little bit of an impact, but he has gone now, and now it's time for others. Everybody, I believe, this is something I've always believed in. If you work hard enough, and you can answer that, have I done what I am capable, what the amount of work that I needed to put into it? I believe if you answer yes, in whatever field, your time will come. And then what you do with it is exactly that. So for all these new fellas from Morgan on down, I'm excited for all of them because their time has come.
The one thing we didn't talk about with Dustin, with Gennaro Guilford going, Gennaro Guilford Jr. is at Skyridge High and is one of the top recruits in the state. So as much as we've seen this Michigan story play out, until we get to recruiting and we see where these and we have some 4-star kids in this state, but we've seen 3-star kids have a huge impact. I wonder where they're going to land now. And you've asked, I remember you asking Bronco about this because of the way Utah and BYU recruit now with the portal, should Utah State focus? Can they get more of the 3-star kids in-state products to go to Utah State than ever before? And he was talking about just doubling down on local recruiting. It'd be super interesting to see how this works out with the next full recruiting class, because there's way too many guys who've coached in Utah and Michigan now to think that they aren't going to be back here.
Yeah, and Bronco had done that a little bit when he was at Virginia, getting some attention for guys out here. I think everybody should evaluate all the opportunities that they have, and then they, along with them, their families and their parents, probably, most likely, hopefully, make the best decision. And for Bronco Mendenhall, this is an exciting time to be a Utah State Aggie, I believe, too, because you're going into a new situation, but it's also familiar. It's not brand new in a sense that, a lot of your programs that you've been competing with are going with you into the Pac-12. I think it's a step up. And with that in mind, see where the dust settles. We talked about with Oklahoma and Texas leaving, who was going to be the king in the Big 12. Well, now it looks like it's going to be Texas Tech, and pretty much everybody in my mind is fighting for number 2. You just can't beat the amount of money. Maybe you might be able to equal it, and that's going to be hard. I don't even know if you can do that, but you're not going to beat them in terms of the finances, and that's always has a loud voice. And now, who's it going to be in this new version of the Pac-12 when we get to the 26th season? You all have in a sense, have the same opportunity to grab hold of that conference. And I think it's going to be a pretty good conference. And we're all familiar with all the schools. So certainly on our show, and the show's all on our station, we're going to be focusing, and Utah State really has a chance to grab a slice of the pie and more attention than they've grabbed traditionally. And we'll see what they do and how many locals they have to be on their team. We already know Hillstead's going to go back, and we'll see if he can regain. He looked like obviously he had way more playing time at Utah State than he did the last couple of years at BYU. And what can he do there? So, yeah, I'm intrigued and excited to see what's ahead for all of our teams, because even as things stay, there's a significant amount of change that creates the intrigue.
I did just read a story, and it wasn't by someone local, it was national, and they were talking about how at the Texas Tech, they led with Texas Tech, but they said Texas Tech and BYU are separating from the rest of the conference. And Kyle Whittingham told us how much money you have is going to determine the pecking order. And we don't get to know exact numbers. It's a little, and I've heard Mark Harlan talk about this. The biggest numbers get talked about. There isn't that much money. There's too much hype in the media. It doesn't reflect the reality. And you can see how that would happen. The biggest numbers and the most glamorous positions are going to get talked about, and offensive and defensive linemen aren't getting paid like quarterbacks. And I get all that. But BYU, when they bring everybody back and run everybody back, I'm assuming the rest of the country has tampered with their guys the same way the rest of the country is tampering with any other program. And if they're holding on to their guys, maybe they got a little more money. Maybe that we will not be outbid quote resonates a little bit. Now, do I think they have Texas Tech cash? No. But do they have better cash than anybody else in the league? Because everybody else in the league seems to be losing guys.
Well, I think that Texas Tech has separated itself. There's no question about that. I don't think, though, if you want to put BYU at number 2, and they're fresh in our minds because they finished number 2 this year, I understand that. But I think the gap from 1 to 2 is pretty large, but I don't think the gap from 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 is that large. I think that if you want to put BYU there, fine, no problem. But I think there's 3 or 4 others that have that opportunity to seize that. I don't think it's as much of a stronghold as Cody Campbell and the cash that he has just decided, I am going to throw at Texas Tech. I don't care what you think. This is the way it's going to be.
I can buy that. I can buy Texas Tech in the top spot by a wide margin. And we don't know, and it's early off very little information, and maybe even in a week we'll think something different. But right now, I'm thinking if you watched L.J. Martin run the ball, there ought to be a lot of schools trying to pry him away from BYU. And if you watch John Henry Daley try to sack a quarterback, there ought to be a lot of schools trying to pry him away from Utah. Well, one guy's staying put and one guy's on the move. Now, some of these guys are in the portal for Utah. We've seen guys go in the portal and still go back to the school. So I don't know how it's going to play out. And then maybe I'll have a different opinion in a week. But a lot of guys in the portal, it looks like they're leaning towards leaving. And if one school loses 3 or 4 potential NFL guys, or certainly all conference guys, and another school doesn't, it looks to me like somebody's got the upper hand then. But we can get a little more info in before we put that in concrete.
And see, but that's where I think now coaching and development are even going to be more important because there's plenty of guys who want a shot. There's a kid, I just read the story last night, a kid out of Delaware, which usually has a good football program, right?
Yeah.
A little squatty running back. He apparently told the coaches at ASU, hey, I'm going to come to Phoenix. I don't care about the money. He wants to be the next Scattaboo. And he told the guys, I won't come to the airport. And if you don't even want me to come on campus, just come to the airport and talk to me because I want you to hear what I have to say. And so they said, okay. And now, I don't know, they just came to the airport and I probably took him to campus.
Right.
And he committed, right? I have no idea if this kid is good, right? We'll find out here next season, right? And the point I'm making, though, is there's plenty of kids who want to move up.
Yes.
And now if you can identify, and it's not just identify the high school kids, it's identify the lower level kids.
Yes.
And I can argue that identify and develop thing that Kyle was so good at is now more important than ever because you can't compete with a Texas Tech financially. It's just not going to happen. So you need to coach them up and develop them even more than you did before. And so we'll see how that goes. Who is really good at identifying and developing and getting kids to be in the position to succeed? And we see that's especially with football. I think basketball, talent is talent, and you got to have it, right? And the star system in basketball is far more true and realistic as far as who's really good. But football, it's all over the place. Malachi Nelson, the number one high school recruit, quarterback a few years back, he's going to make his fourth transfer here. I mean, it's not happening. It's not working. And he was identified. And I do think what Dustin Smith said, well, if some of these kids were in Texas, it's like whoever the quarterback is at Mater Dei, boy, he must be really good, right? Because he's the quarterback at Mater Dei, and they've had a slew of guys go in and do great things. So I understand all that, but they're still missing. And can you find dudes and get them to where they need to be? That's going to be the fascinating thing. Money talks, but there are other ways. You're not going to compete financially with Texas Tech, but can you do other things to compete with them?
Dustin Smith, founder of QB Elite, Spanish Fork High School football coach, talked football with us earlier today. Kevin Graham, also on football, and David Locke, radio voice of the Jazz. All those interviews available wherever you get your podcasts. Listen to them at your convenience this weekend if you missed them. We're back with your feedback next. Stay with us. Time for your feedback. Utah Star defensive end John Henry Daley committing to Michigan. What's your mood, Ute fans, about all of this? It's a range from blame the media, Ross stirring the pot.
Who's stirring the pot?
Me for posting that on Twitter. You for posting that on Facebook. Us.
No, that pot has stirred itself over and over again.
Oh, I think I see that in the other comments here. You got super supportive Pete. Get paid, JHD. Good for him. Christian, good for him. I hope he excels. G-Pa Robbie at Utah Ute 007. I'm numb to all the noise now. Life marches on. You know, I get that a little bit. On December 26th, when Kyle announces he's going to, Michigan and the whole news breaks. Wow. Man, you're trying to get on with your life. It's January 9th now. We do it for a living, so we just keep. But I get other people juggling other things like, all right, I got it. What's next? Let's move on.
Well, yeah, we're 9 months away from playing a ball game, too. I understand that. And every kid who goes in the transfer portal, I wish them well as long as they're not leaving ASU.
Evan says, I'd be annoyed if he was leaving for somewhere else, but I understand that he still wants to play for Kyle Whittingham. Evan, very understanding.
Well, that will be his third school, so.
Yep, started BYU, right? BYU, Utah, Michigan.
Yeah, I've said if a kid transfers and then transfers again, how can you be surprised? Because he already did it once.
Yeah.
He's already shown you that he's willing. Now, obviously, a local kid going from BYU to Utah or vice versa isn't that big of a move geographically. You're not really changing the rest of your life. But going to Michigan's a big deal. And maybe he has established a relationship with Whittingham and feels like this is something that I need to do. And also maybe the cash is better. And so be it, man. I just think that if I had an opportunity and I'm young and I don't have to worry about kids and uprooting them and everything that goes into it, and I have a chance to go to Michigan, wow. How do you say no to that?
Brendan says, it's out of my control. I won't lose any sleep over it.
Well, I don't know that I would be losing sleep anyway because it's just nothing but football. And for the rest of us as fans, keep it in perspective. What difference does it really make? And also, too, if a kid leaves, well, who do you replace him with? What do you have that is on the field that next coming season? It's the old Ben Olsen, Max Hall. Ben took off. Max Hall came in and won a ton of games. Nobody has won more, right? If Bachmeier were to stay all four, he probably would. But who knows if that's going to happen for a number of reasons. And, well, look at that. So it's not necessarily who you don't have. It's who you do have. And there's plenty of kids who know how to play this game. Locke always talks about how the NBA has more talent than ever. Well, I can argue football has more talent than ever. Yeah. And so with that in mind, there's plenty of kids around here and who would give whatever to be able to play defensive line if their body types allow it to be at the University of Utah. So let's see what they come up with. And we will. We'll have 12 opportunities to see it next season.
I think Bill makes a strong point. Strong answer out of Bill here. He says, in reaction to the question, Utah star defensive end John Henry Daley commits to Michigan. What's your mood about all this? And he says, I don't really care anymore. Need to focus on the team we have now, not those who abandon it. Trust the process. Trust Scally. That's a pretty healthy attitude going forward, and probably the only thing that will get the Utes in a good place, a place they want to be a year from now.
I mean, who's to say McGibbon doesn't come in here with whoever's the quarterbacks, if they stay, if they go, whatever, and light it up. And Jordan Gross, man, he was just coaching high school because, he had NFL money, blah, blah, blah. But now's the time. He's ready to go. And this guy isn't awesome. And I can go down the line from all the guys that they've brought into the program, right? So I would be far from thinking, oh my gosh, the sky has fallen. It's just an interesting story, one in which, in the next week or two, it'll calm down a little bit, and then it'll get bigger with spring ball, and then it'll calm down, and then we'll get to next season. And the way I look at it, and we were talking about this the other day in the office, man, we're going to be following Michigan unlike we've ever followed Michigan before.
100%. Absolutely.
It's going to be fun.
I think that the thing that Scotty said about McGibbon that really has me intrigued about the Utes is because I was asking Scotty, I'm like, how exactly did you do it? That often, and I know it's a different level of football, Mountain West, I get, but they are still, everybody's got the same problem, so it's pretty even, I think. And they were getting chunk plays. They were getting so many 15, 25-yard play, bigger than that. Like, how do they do it? And Scotty looked at me and said, yeah, the most amazing thing is they're doing is that offensive line is patchwork at best.
We saw the sack numbers, yeah.
Yeah, and he said, and they're still doing it. So, how did they do that? Because Dustin Smith had good points about rebuilding the O-line and the strength coach and all that. But McGibbon kind of negotiated that a little bit last year. Now, he had a super experienced quarterback, but guess what? He's going to have a super experienced quarterback, so I'm intrigued.
We hope.
Yeah. So far, as we sit here today, who knows what tomorrow brings.
Nothing for granted these days.
Yeah, right. That's the truth. All right, here's one thing you can take for granted. Jake and Ben right after the break. Stay with us.